Chapter 1351. In order to survive, Argent Marshal Hale spilled everything he knew in front of Tan Xiu. He was even willing to tell the truth about his self-righteous views. Full of hatred, he gnashed his teeth and said, "That's right. I hate him. If only he could live for 1,000 years, or even a few thousand years, I would have become very powerful. But he's dead. What should I do now? I have no one to provide a lot of resources, no one to show filial respect to me, and even no one to protect me. The Rosefinch Holy Sect is in a precarious situation. The Inner Pill Sect, the Everlasting Palace, and some other forces that hit it when it's down. Even I." Having said that, Argent Marshal Hale fiercely clenched his fists and loudly said, "Even I was seriously injured by the Inner Pill Sect's experts and almost died several times. Why should I face such a tragic fate? Why did I get implicated by the so-called master and get killed by the enemy before I grew up? I would have respected him if he were alive. Because he could bring me benefits and make me stronger. But he's dead and brought me disaster. That's why I hate him. I can't wait to resurrect him and kill him with my own hands." As he spoke, Argent Marshal Hale completely vented his emotions and even his roar sounded somewhat hysterical. From this, it could be seen that he really hated Tan Xiu. Tan Xiu looked at him and watched as the color on his handsome face turned particularly pale after he finished speaking. Never in his wildest dreams would he have imagined that he had raised an ingrate, and one with a twisted mind at that. "Do you want to live?" asked Tan Xiu slowly as he stared at Argent Marshal Hale. "Yes, I want to live," said Argent Marshal Hale hurriedly. "I'll do anything as long as you don't kill me. That bastard once said that it's better to live a bad life than to die a good death. I'm afraid of death. I really don't want to die." Tan Xiu moved his foot away from his chest. As his facial muscles twitched, his appearance had changed to that of Star Cultivation Great Emperor. He still had the same handsome face, but there was a dissatisfied and lonely look on his face at the moment. He shook his head and bitterly said, "I never thought that I, Tan Xiu, would make such a mistake in accepting a disciple after struggling for so many years in the immortal world. The child I painstakingly raised is actually an ingrate who can't wait to eat my flesh." "What?" After Argent Marshal Hale got up from the ground, his complexion greatly changed when he saw Tan Xiu's appearance. Especially when he heard Tan Xiu's words, he took dozens of steps back as though he had seen a ghost. "You! Impossible!" Argent Marshal Hale screamed. Tan Xiu's face turned cold as he coldly said, "Do you really think I'm dead? Do you really think that Great Emperor Danqing and Zither Demon Jioya will be the final winner? Ridiculous, really ridiculous." Argent Marshal Hale's immortal soul trembled violently and his eyes were full of fear. As Tan Xiu spoke, he frantically ran away. However, not only did the soul-extinguishing array not allow him to escape, but he also suffered a counterattack from the array and was forced to retreat in front of Tan Xiu. After he heavily slammed on the ground, more cracks appeared on his immortal soul. "Impossible. This is absolutely impossible. You're already dead. You failed to cross the divine tribulation and your soul has already scattered. How can you still be alive?" "That's right, the flying guillotine. In the entire immortal world, only he and I know about the flying guillotine. Do you know anything about it? Using blood as a guide and soul as a medium to absorb the destiny of the 9 regions to create the flying guillotine," Tan Xiu said disdainfully. "You're right. You're the only one in the entire immortal world who knows about the flying guillotine's secret art. This is something I created for you." Argent Marshal Hale was in despair. He almost crawled to Tan Xiu's feet and screamed, "I was wrong, Master. I thought your soul had scattered, so I had to speak ill of you in front of those enemies in order to survive. Spare me, I'm your favorite disciple. Master." Looking at Argent Marshal Hale's appearance, Tan Xiu secretly shook his head and forced a smile. "I, Tan Xiu, am known as the strongest Star Cultivation Great Emperor in the immortal world and a dignified supremacy stage powerhouse. I never thought that I would accept such a coward as my disciple. You really made me lose face. Sirius is dead. Did you betray him? If my intel is correct, you secretly colluded with Venerable Whiteclaw under Great Emperor Danqing and attacked Sirius, causing him to be killed by Venerable Whiteclaw. Am I right? No, it's not true. Argent Marshal Hale hurriedly shouted. I didn't betray Senior Brother Sirius. Master, you can't listen to the slander of a villain. Do you think your senior brother Apotheon Mu is a villain? Tan Xiu sneered. Do you think Myriad Sounds, Ting Chong, 9 Immortal Fingers, and Enchantress you are also villains? Let me tell you, they are now in the Misty Spring Ocean and have become a part of my Great Tang Empire. I'm the Emperor of the Great Tang Empire, the Great Tang Heavenly Emperor. You are. Argent Marshal Hale's pupils shrunk. He finally understood who the Great Tang Heavenly Emperor, whose name shook the secret palace of Drunken Immortal Supreme, was. He also finally understood who was the one who plotted against him in the floating snow city. It turned out that's it. I used to have dozens of disciples, but only Apotheon Mu and the other 4 are still alive now, Tan Xiu said lightly. They didn't disgrace my name and will definitely follow me back to the peak in the future. We'll be above the Supremes in the immortal world and overlook the trillions of races in the immortal world. As for you, you shall die. In an instant. Tan Xiu unleashed his innate divine sword. A violent sword light directly split Argent Marshal Hale's immortal soul into 2 halves and watched as his immortal soul gradually collapsed. I was wrong, Master. Argent Marshal Hale's last thought was transmitted into Tan Xiu's heart. Tan Xiu hadn't killed Argent Marshal Hale ever since he returned to the Misty Spring Ocean. Although Argent Marshal Hale had betrayed him and the Rosefinch Holy Sect, he still couldn't bear to kill him because of the friendship between master and disciple. However, Argent Marshal Hale's previous words, the hatred he showed, and his ingrate appearance finally aroused Tan Xiu's killing intent. He was wrong. He had to pay the price. Although the price of having his immortal soul dissipated was too high. Come out. Tang Xiu put away his complicated emotions and indifferently said as he turned to look at the distance. Immediately. A shadow appeared out of thin air inside the soul-extinguishing array. It was a hunchbacked old man with a cane in his hand. His hair was unkempt and his clothes were tattered. The most important thing was his shoes, which still had a few toes exposed. Sloppy. Very sloppy. Even a beggar would be cleaner than him. There was a sarcoma between the old man's eyebrows. His cloudy eyes stared at Tan Xiu blankly before he immediately sat on a large bluestone tens of meters away from Tan Xiu. Shaking his head, he sighed, Celestial Mystery Heavenly Emperor was right. You really came back alive. I thought I'd never be able to repay the favor I owed you in this life. Because of that, I've formed a tribulation in my heart that I'll never be able to cross. But now, this old beggar sees hope again and the direction to become a deity. A complicated look flashed in Tan Xiu's eyes. He sent a message token and stared at the old man, saying, How did you find me, Sky Exterminator Old Beggar? Sky Exterminator Old Beggar took out a worn-out white porcelain bowl from his chest pocket. The magical thing was that there was actually a fragrant ambergris nectar inside the worn-out white porcelain bowl. After gulping it down a few mouthfuls, he threw the white porcelain bowl to Tan Xiu and grunted. Drink it and I'll tell you. Tan Xiu didn't hesitate and directly drank 2 mouthfuls. He immediately felt a surge of immortal force explode in his lower abdomen. The billowing immortal force poured into his dantian space, causing a sesame-sized celestial body to instantly expand thousands of times. Speak. Tan Xiu threw the white porcelain bowl back to Sky Exterminator Old Beggar and indifferently said. Sky Exterminator Old Beggar sighed. This old beggar was tracking Great Tang Heavenly Emperor, but I didn't expect you to be him. It's very strange. I can't sense your original aura, and even your immortal soul has changed. I wouldn't have been able to see your true identity if I hadn't spied on your conversation with that evil disciple of yours. What are you waiting for? Asked Tan Xiu calmly. I'm waiting for Apotheosis Bella. Sky Exterminator Old Beggar forced a smile. Why? Asked Tan Xiao with a frown. Sky Exterminator Old Beggar answered honestly, only when Apotheosis Bella arrives will I have no excuse to kill you. Because I don't want to be remembered by a supreme because of killing someone. Tan Xiao was silent for a long time. Then, he slowly said, go tell Heavenly Emperor Tianji to cut off one of his arms and I'll let bygones be bygones for bullying my disciple. I'll give you a piece of news to repay the favor you owe me. Henceforth, all the grievances between us will be written off. Sky Exterminator Old Beggar looked pleasantly surprised and asked in a deep voice, is this true? Yes, answered Tan Xiao. Aren't you afraid that I'll publicize your identity? Asked Sky Exterminator Old Beggar. You won't, and you won't dare to, said Tan Xiao lightly. Sky Exterminator Old Beggar let out a bitter smile. He shook his head and sighed. This old geezer has been roaming the world for nearly 20,000 years, and only you can make me feel helpless. Star cultivation brat, don't ever die again in the future. This old man will be very lonely if you die. Really, really lonely. Having said that, after that, he glanced at the direction of the misty spring ocean. Then, his figure turned into a stream of light and flashed toward the distance. In just a few breaths, he had already appeared thousands of miles away. Are you all right, Xiao? Apotheosis Bella quickly rushed to Tan Xiao's side and fiercely glared at the direction where Sky Exterminator Old Beggar left. Then, she asked with a concerned face. I'm fine. Tan Xiao shook his head. I've heard about the matter between you and Sky Exterminator Old Beggar, said Apotheosis Bella. Did he make things difficult for you? Tan Xiao shook his head and forced a smile. He didn't make things difficult for me. But just in case, I sent you a message and told you to come here as soon as possible. I believe him, but trust in this world is too fake. I can't afford any uncertain factors. Because I'm still too weak. I firmly believe that you'll become stronger soon, said Apotheosis Bella seriously. But Sky Exterminator Old Beggar knows your true identity, which is indeed an uncertain factor. Do you want me to hunt him down? Can you kill him? Asked Tan Xiao. The chance is less than 1 in 10,000, said Apotheosis Bella with a forced smile. Chapter 1352. Time flew by, and the years passed by quickly. In the blink of an eye, more than half a year had passed since Tan Xiao cleaned up the mess. With the birth of Tan Xiao's younger brother, Tang Xing, the name of the great Tang Heavenly Emperor gradually spread throughout the immortal world. The most popular news was that the great Tang Heavenly Emperor had occupied the immortal Lyceum and forced Apotheosis Bella to leave. Thus, the great Tang Empire was established in the immortal Lyceum, and the great Tang Heavenly Emperor was the first emperor of the great Tang Empire. For a time, countless eyes began to pay attention to the great Tang Empire. What surprised them was that the great Tang Empire's territory was expanding very quickly. In just a few years, the great Tang Empire had completely occupied the immortal Lyceum. Even some of the surrounding desolate starfields had become the great Tang Empire's territory. Moreover, the great Tang Empire was expanding rapidly in all directions. It was estimated that in just a few years, the great Tang Empire's territory would extend to the borders of the other 3 immortal domains. If the great Tang Empire was ambitious and continued to expand, it was very likely that it would annex the other 3 immortal domains. While many forces in the immortal domains were paying attention to the great Tang Empire, another piece of news came out. In the eastern part of the immortal Lyceum where the great Tang Empire was located, there was a small heavenly phoenix immortal domain. A ruthless and merciless perfected golden immortal had appeared there. In just a few short years, he had created a small country called the Missing Star Empire. This country. It was not an empire of mortals, but an empire of cultivators. This perfected golden immortal was called the Missing Star Immortal Venerable. She was the first empress of the Missing Star Empire. If it was just this, it would not have attracted the attention of many forces in the immortal world. The most important thing was that this missing star immortal venerable was unconventional and had obtained a huge amount of wealth from an unknown source. According to some people, she had purchased more than 30 perfected golden immortal gladiators from the convict arena in just a few years. In addition, under her leadership, she had fought against various powerhouses for several years and had even killed more than a dozen famous perfected golden immortals in the immortal world. This had caused a huge sensation. However, while the Great Tang Empire's Great Tang Heavenly Emperor and the Missing Star Empire's Missing Star Venerate were being closely watched by various forces, another piece of news spread like wildfire to every immortal domain in the immortal world. The news even caused a huge stir in the entire immortal world. The Celestial Mystery Emperor cut off one of his arms and swore an immortal oath that he would not reattach his broken arm due to his serious injuries. He would live in the immortal world with a broken body forever. He would only reconstruct his body when he ascended to become a god one day. This message, it caused countless golden immortal realm experts in the immortal dimension to be flabbergasted and extremely shocked. Those experts at the Supreme Master Realm were shocked. They did not understand why the Celestial Mystery Emperor would do that. Myriad Dao Immortal Domain, Tianji City. The Celestial Mystery Emperor stood ramrod straight, looking at the golden disk in the sky. His handsome face looked rather demonic, and there was a hint of bitterness on it. On the golden disk, a black line gradually faded away and was replaced by a flash of red light. It really is him. The Celestial Mystery Emperor sighed with a wry smile. The unkempt sky exterminator old beggar grabbed the white porcelain bowl and gulped down the bejeweled nectar inside. After a long time, he burped and said, "Nirvana and rebirth. Even the heavenly Tao law can't stop his footsteps. If he can live until then, I'm afraid that the entire immortal world will change dramatically. Those two are in trouble." The Celestial Mystery Emperor slowly turned to look at the sky exterminator old beggar and said with a wry smile, how would this emperor know about the relationship between him and her? Otherwise, with his petty character, even if he suffered some losses, he could only blame it on his bad luck. The sky exterminator old beggar grinned and said, in fact, you should have already predicted that he would face such a tribulation before he became a supreme, right? But I don't understand why you are so afraid of him. The Celestial Mystery Emperor pondered for a moment and said with a wry smile, because I know that no one could kill him in the past. In order to calculate his fate, I paid the price of 1,000 years of painstaking cultivation, yet I could only calculate the initial result, not the subsequent process and ending. But now, his fate has disappeared in the heavenly Tao. There are only two possibilities for such a change. The sky exterminator old beggar's expression shifted and asked, which two? The Celestial Mystery Emperor slowly said, the first one is that he really died and completely disappeared in the 6 paths of reincarnation. The second one is that the immortal world is no longer his cage and he can ascend to the divine world and become a deity. The sky exterminator old beggar was surprised and asked, judging from the current situation, is it the second one? I don't know. The Celestial Mystery Emperor shook his head and said helplessly, every cause and effect has its own variables. My opportunity lies with him, so I have to do what he asked me to do. Otherwise, let alone the opportunity, it's hard to say whether I can keep my life or not. The sky exterminator old beggar burst into laughter and said, so that's how it is. Celestial Mystery, it seems that your situation is the same as mine. That opportunity also lies with him. Since that's the case, let him continue doing what he should be doing. When the opportunity comes, we'll naturally be able to see him again. The Celestial Mystery Emperor nodded silently and said, I have a feeling that it won't take long. Suddenly, the Celestial Mystery Emperor and Sky Exterminator Old Beggar's expressions shifted. They looked at the distant void and suddenly saw a stalwart figure crossing the endless immortal domain and directly appearing in front of them. What's the matter? Asked the Celestial Mystery Emperor with a cold face despite having guessed the other party's intention. The green-robed old Taoist with his hair combed into a bun smiled and asked, Celestial Mystery Emperor, you're a dignified supreme being in the immortal world. There are only a handful of people in the entire immortal world who can force you to bow your head. This emperor wants to know who has such great ability to force you to cut off your own arm. What does my business have to do with you? Replied the celestial mystery emperor indifferently. The green-robed old Taoist slightly furrowed his brows. A cold light suddenly flashed in his eyes and he slowly said, "It's indeed none of my business. We've known each other for thousands of years. If anyone dares to threaten you, you can come to me for help. It's just a favor. You don't have to cut off your own arm and submit to others. I don't like to owe others favors. I appreciate your kindness, but I really don't need it," said the celestial mystery emperor lightly. "If there's nothing else, please go back." The green-robed old Taoist's expression changed and anger flashed across his face. He then coldly snorted and said, "If that's the case, then I won't bother you anymore. Farewell." In the next few days, dozens of supreme beings came. Some came in person, while some came in incarnations. Without exception, all of them felt that the celestial mystery emperor's action of cutting off his own arm was inconceivable, so they came to inquire about the reason. However, the celestial mystery emperor didn't say a word about it, not even to his best friends. Several months later, Sky Exterminator Old Beggar finally left contentedly after freeloading for food and drinks in Heavenly Mystery City. However, not long after he left, a messaging charm appeared in the celestial mystery emperor's hand. "Come to my 4 sacred abode if you have time." The celestial mystery emperor fiddled with the messaging talisman, his eyes shining brightly. He had known Sky Exterminator Old Beggar for 10,000 years and finally knew his origin. 4 sacred abode. It was the most mysterious force in the entire immortal world. Even the celestial mystery emperor could barely figure out the immortal domain where 4 sacred abode was located, but he couldn't figure out the origin of the Lord of 4 sacred abode. However, according to the past movements of 4 sacred abode, he inferred that 4 sacred abode had a deep relationship with the Rosefinch holy sect. And now, he finally knew that Sky Exterminator Old Beggar was the Lord of 4 sacred abode. Misty Spring Sea, Immortal Domain. Tan Xiao stood among the flowers, holding his newborn brother Tang Xing in his arms. He constantly nourished his body with chaotic force. He even used a heaven-defying immortal method to preserve the purest innate qi in Tang Xing's body after he was born. His aptitude is not much worse than that of Gu Yin and the little beggar. I just need to wait for him to be a few years old, and then I can absorb the 5-color dragon ball into his body, so that he can go further and faster on the road of cultivation. Not far away, Tang Yinda smiled bitterly and shook his head while looking at his 2 sons. Then, he said helplessly, "That stinky brat Tang Xing has been clinging to Xiao ever since he was born. He doesn't even want me to hug him. It's really infuriating." Su Lingyun couldn't help but smile and said, "Are you jealous of your son?" Tang Yinda blushed and said with dissatisfaction, "How am I jealous? Jealousy is the innate talent of women. I'm a dignified man, the retired emperor of the great Tang Empire. How can I be jealous of such a trivial matter? What a joke. Alright, I still have something to do, so I'll leave first. Don't disturb me if there's nothing important. Be careful." Su Lingyun smiled as she looked at her husband's back, which seemed to be escaping, and called out with concern. Half a day later, Tan Xiao returned his younger brother, Tan Xiao, to his mother, Su Lingyun, and said, "Mom, let him follow me to cultivate when he's 2 years old. I have a lot of things to deal with in the Great Tang Empire in the past 2 years, but the Great Tang Empire will be completely stabilized after 2 years. At that time, I'm going to go into seclusion to cultivate and break through to a higher realm. With him by my side, I can make it easier for him to step on the road of cultivation and let him face his cultivation life with the best attitude." Su Lingyun hesitated and asked, "Isn't it too early to let him start cultivating at the age of 2? Tan Xiao shook his head and said, "What I mean is to let him lay a solid foundation at the age of 2. He must also cultivate in these 2 years, but it's just that he'll be training his body." "Ah." Su Lingyun looked puzzled. Tan Xiao said with a smile, "Mom, there's a saying that you should have heard before. Many people describe others who cultivate fast by saying that they started cultivating in their mother's womb. In fact, before Tang Xing was born, I personally concocted a medicine for you to change his aptitude before he was born. He'll be born with an aptitude that many cultivators can't compare with. Chapter 1353. Tang Xiu was right. In the immortal world, there were many disciples of major sects and sections. Due to the abundance of resources, many children of important figures in the immortal world received various elixirs and medicines before they were even born. Some children with extremely high bloodlines were already comparable to Golden Core stage and Nascent Soul stage experts the moment they were born. There were even some who had powerful bloodlines from prehistoric beasts and ancient immortal beasts that were born with strength comparable to ordinary immortals. Let the children win at the starting line. These words were once familiar to people on Earth, but they were now famous sayings. Su Lingyun knew that her son was amazing, so she was willing to let Tan Xiu make the decisions regarding cultivation. Master. With a smile, Gu Yan floated over from afar. Tan Xiu handed his younger brother, Tang Xing, to his mother and smilingly said, "Have you finished your seclusion?" "I just finished." Gu Yan nodded with a smile. "How long will it take for you to break through to the perfected golden immortal stage?" asked Tan Xiu. "The time is too short. I can't break through to the perfected golden immortal stage for the time being." Gu Yan shook her head. "But it won't be a problem within 100 years. Let's go." Tan Xiu slightly smiled. "I have something to do with you." Shortly after, the duo appeared on an isolated island in the misty spring ocean. Just as Gu Yan looked confused, 4 figures appeared from the mist. "Your Majesty." The leader, Jin Shi, respectfully handed over an interspatial ring. Tan Xiu took the ring and scanned its interior with his spiritual sense. He then nodded with satisfaction and asked, "How's the development of the intelligence department?" "Our intelligence personnel are everywhere in the entire Immortal Lyceum domain," said Jin Shi. "Our intelligence network has been spread out in the Sunluo Immortal Domain in the southeast, Obsidian Immortal Domain in the west, and Aquamarine Immortal Domain in the north. It's estimated that the intelligence network in these 3 immortal domains will be completed within 3 years. However, in order to purchase magical stones and crystals, as well as the cost of intelligence, I've used up all the crystals and marrow crystals that you gave me." Tan Xiu thought for a moment and said, "Give me 2 months, then I'll give you enough immortal crystals and crystal essences for your shadow division to use for 100 years. "Yes." Jin Shi nodded and suddenly asked, "Your Majesty, we've noticed a situation. An old man with unfathomable cultivation base has been coming to our Immortal Lyceum since a dozen days ago. He's been asking about you everywhere. According to my calculations, he should be arriving at the misty spring ocean soon." Tan Xiu asked, "Who are they?" "Old Sycamore," said Jin Shi. Tan Xiu raised his brows and murmured, "I didn't expect that he would come looking for me." "Fine, since you're here, stay and work for me. Investigate his whereabouts immediately and send me a message as soon as possible. Also, if you find any traces of him, immediately inform him that I'm here." "Yes." Jin Shi replied. He immediately walked to the side and sent out dozens of message sigils in a row. It didn't take long before a message sigil penetrated the misty ocean and lit up in front of everyone. When Jin Shi handed the message sigil to Tan Xiu narrowed his eyes slightly. Celestial Boundary City. Old Sycamore was sitting in the largest restaurant in the city, his eyes sweeping through the streets outside the window. On the street not far from him, a group of soldiers of the Great Tang Empire in battle robes was besieging 2 black-robed men. The 2 black-robed men had very strong cultivation and had already reached the crossing tribulation stage. The soldiers of the Great Tang Empire besieging them were only at the Great Ascension stage, except for the captain who was at the Celestial Immortal stage. The Great Tang Empire has gone too far. A hazy figure appeared out of thin air. It was a white-haired woman with killing intent in her eyes. She angrily shouted, "If you continue to pester us, then don't blame us for being ruthless and killing all of you here." The celestial immortal captain held a spear and looked at the white-haired woman as if he was facing a great enemy. He said in a deep voice, "It's you who didn't abide by the laws of the great Tang Empire and openly killed others in the city. Also, if you can explain your identity and the grudges you have with the people you killed, you can still get a chance to be absolved. But you were too arrogant and ignored us, so we can only capture you and hand you over to the Ministry of Justice for punishment." The white-haired woman shouted angrily, "This place used to belong to the Immortal Lyceum and was the territory of Apotheosis Bella. You occupied this place and even made laws here. Why should we submit to you?" The celestial immortal captain said coldly, "His Majesty of the Great Tang Empire once said that the immortal world is a world where the strong are respected. Our Great Tang Empire has a strong army and is powerful, so we can naturally make laws. Those who obey us will prosper, and those who oppose us will perish. If you don't want to abide by the laws of the Great Tang Empire, you can leave this place. But since you have violated our laws here, you must be punished." The white-haired woman said coldly, "With just you in the tea house." Old Sycamore agreed with the words of the Great Tang Empire's celestial immortal captain. The immortal world is indeed a world where the strong are respected. As long as one has absolute strength, they can make laws. In particular, the phrase, "Those who obey me will prosper, and those who oppose me will perish," struck a chord in his heart. It's a pity that this heavenly mirror city is just a small city of the Immortal Lyceum, and the immortal station here is only a golden immortal. That white-haired woman is a late-stage golden immortal, so I'm afraid it will be too difficult to subdue her." Old Sycamore shook his head and sighed inwardly. "Oh." Old Sycamore's expression suddenly changed as he looked at the teahouse's waiter who was dressed like a manservant. The waiter looked outside through the window and immediately cupped his fists. "This junior is a member of the Great Tang Empire's Shadow Department. Greetings, Senior Old Sycamore." Old Sycamore furrowed his brows and asked, "What's the meaning of being a member of the Great Tang Empire's Shadow Department? How do you know me?" The waiter replied respectfully, "The Shadow Department is the Great Tang Empire's intelligence network, and I'm the person in charge of Heavenly Mirror City. In fact, you've already appeared in the line of sight of our Shadow Department's intelligence members the moment Senior stepped into the Immortal Lyceum. Just a quarter of an hour ago, I received a message from the head of the headquarters informing me of the answer you've been looking for." Old Sycamore's expression changed and he asked in a deep voice, "Where is the Great Tang Heavenly Emperor?" The waiter replied, "Senior, you'll know the location of His Majesty immediately if you help us settle the matter outside." Whoosh, Old Sycamore instantly appeared in the sky above the street outside and pressed down on the white-haired woman with a powerful aura. He said coldly, "You have two choices. Tell me your identity and the grudge between you and the victim. Or, kill them on the spot." The white-haired woman's pupils contracted and a look of horror appeared in her eyes. She had never imagined that the Great Tang Empire would have a perfected golden immortal in Heavenly Mirror City. Moreover, this perfected golden immortal's cultivation was extremely terrifying and definitely not at the early stages of the perfected golden immortal stage. "Senior, I'm the sect master of the Sky Arcana sect, Xuanningshuang. We've chased and killed the traitor of my Sky Arcana sect, Xian Fei. He humiliated and killed my daughter and stole my Sky Arcana sect's bright sun immortal mirror. Although we despise the laws of the Great Tang Empire, we have no intention of deliberately offending them." Old Sycamore looked at the celestial immortal captain and said indifferently, "She has already said that you can decide how to deal with this matter." The celestial immortal captain pondered for a moment and sent out a message signet. After the time it takes for an incense stick to burn, a message signet came back. Immediately, a look of understanding appeared on his face and he said lightly, "You're indeed the sect master of the Sky Arcana sect. It seems that you're right. Forget it. If you're willing to abide by the laws of the Great Tang Empire, you can stay in the Immortal Lyceum. If you're not satisfied, you can leave." Xuanningshuang pondered for a moment and said slowly, "Actually, the laws of the Great Tang Empire are quite good. They have a very good deterrent effect on those evil people. As long as your Great Tang Empire doesn't make things difficult for the Sky Arcana sect, we're naturally willing to stay." After she finished speaking, She looked at old Sycamore and asked respectfully, "May I ask who you are, Senior?" Old Sycamore said lightly, "You don't need to know who I am. You just need to act according to the laws of the Great Tang Empire. You can leave now." "Yes." Xuening Shuang smiled bitterly inwardly. She cupped her fists and left with the two disciples. Whoosh, the tea-house waiter shot a jade slip at old Sycamore, and his figure immediately disappeared into thin air. A moment later, old Sycamore looked at the tea-house and slightly furrowed his brows. This was because he discovered that the waiter was nowhere to be seen. Interesting. Old Sycamore instantly released his spiritual sense and covered a radius of 5,000 kilometers in the blink of an eye. However, the smile on his face froze when he saw that the member of the Great Tang Empire's Shadow Division, who hadn't even reached the immortal realm, had disappeared without a trace in just a short period of time. What's going on? It's impossible for him to leave so quickly. Could there be a concealment array in Skyrealm City? A concealment array that even I can't detect? No, it doesn't seem like a concealment array. It should be a teleportation array. Old Sycamore was startled and immediately became vigilant. A few days later, when old Sycamore arrived at the deserted island in the misty spring ocean according to the location recorded in the jade slip given to him by the tea-house waiter, he saw Tan Xiao and Gu Yen sitting cross-legged in front of a tea table, quietly sipping tea. "It's been a long time, old Sycamore. You're still as elegant as ever." Tan Xiao slowly raised his head and smiled at old Sycamore. Old Sycamore looked at Tan Xiao with a complicated expression and said in a deep voice, "I need an explanation." Tan Xiao lightly patted the table, and a cup of fragrant tea flew up and floated in front of old Sycamore. Tan Xiao smiled and said, "This cup of tea is to thank you for helping the Great Tang Empire's soldiers in Skyrealm City. Please have some tea." Old Sycamore was silent for a moment, but he still picked up the cup of tea and drank it in one gulp. Then, he said, "Can you tell me now?" The smile on Tan Xiao's face gradually faded, and he said with a bitter smile, "Is an explanation really that important? He's already dead, and you have your own life to live. Why are you still pestering him?" Chapter 1354. Old Sycamore took a deep breath and said with a straight face, "Some people can be remembered for a lifetime even if you only see them once. Some things have already happened, and there's no way to cut off the karma. He's dead, but I haven't repaid the debt I owe him. Tell me, who are you?" Tan Xiao put away the tea table and tea set, slowly got up and said, "Since you want to pursue the answer, then stay by my side and work for me. You'll know it in the future." "Ha ha ha," old Sycamore burst into laughter. "You want me to work for you? Are you kidding me? There's only one person in the entire immortal world who can make me work for him. Unfortunately, he has already perished. Since you think his soul has already perished, why bother entangling with me?" Tan Xiao asked back. This, old Sycamore was rendered speechless. Suddenly, Tan Xiao's expression changed. He noticed a figure flashing lightning fast and a bitter smile appeared on his handsome face. "Why are you here?" asked Tan Xiao helplessly. Apotheosis Bella glanced at old Sycamore and then revealed a strange expression. She said, "I sensed the aura of a powerhouse passing by us and then came here. But I didn't expect that old Sycamore would come to find you. You know each other?" Old Sycamore's eyes flickered and he saluted. "Apotheosis Bella, no, it should be Apotheosis Bella. Have you recovered from your injuries?" Apotheosis Bella nodded. "I got the holy dragon fruit, so I've fully recovered. On the other hand, your injuries healed faster than I expected. I found an interesting person, so I spent a lot of effort to recover and then came here." Old Sycamore forced a smile. "That's not right. I heard that you were forced to leave by Great Tang Heavenly Emperor. How come?" Tan Xiao interrupted him and looked at Apotheosis Bella. "Do you know old Sycamore, Bella?" "We've known each other for hundreds of years," said Apotheosis Bella. "In the last 600 to 700 years, we've joined hands to fight the experts of the Inner Pill sect and the Everlasting Palace more than a dozen times. Last time, we were besieged by the experts of the Inner Pill sect, the Everlasting Palace, and the Myriad Sword sect. If it wasn't for old Sycamore bringing up the rear for me, I'm afraid I wouldn't have been able to escape back to the Immortal Court. Tan Xiu sighed in his heart and said slowly, you know that he has a relationship with the Rosefinch Holy Sect? I don't know. Apotheosis Bella shook her head. However, the forces and individuals who have enmity with the Inner Pill sect and the Everlasting Palace are all considered friends. Tan Xiu turned to look at old Sycamore and said with a wry smile, you did this to repay a debt of gratitude? To repay the kindness of those 10 immortal crystals? To repay him for continuously sending you cultivation resources and helping you break through? Old Sycamore resolutely said, that's right. If it weren't for Star Cultivation Great Emperor, I wouldn't be where I am today. My brother is dead, but I am still alive. My brother can't continue to repay his kindness, but I can do it for my brother. Why bother? Tan Xiu forced a smile and said, fine, I'll give you a satisfactory answer for what you've done for the past hundreds of years. You didn't want to go with me back then, but that was your choice. Your brother kept sending you all kinds of cultivation resources and constantly helped you break through again and again under my instruction. But I never expected that he would commit a crime just because of my desire and eventually die tragically in the hands of the sect disciple I slaughtered. What did you say? Old Sycamore's eyes were filled with horror. He took a few steps back and looked at Tan Xiu in disbelief as he hurriedly cried out, Your Star Cultivation Great Emperor? Tan Xiu nodded and sighed. You didn't expect that I'd still be alive, did you? I originally thought that I was dead, but I didn't expect that I would still retain a wisp of my soul and eventually come back to life. Old Sycamore, only 2 people in the whole world know what cultivation art you're practicing. One is your brother, and the other is me. This is because the Divine Wood Heavenly Seal art is a cultivation art I created. Upon hearing this, old Sycamore looked at Tan Xiu with a completely different expression. It was now filled with respect and excitement. His aged body instantly straightened up and he knelt in front of Tan Xiu on one knee and said respectfully, Old Sycamore greets Star Cultivation Great Emperor. I'll never forget your kindness in teaching me. I'm willing to follow you and obey your orders. Tan Xiu said, You're very good, Old Sycamore. You 2 brothers are also very good. Since you've decided, then stay here. I'm in need of manpower now, so I hope you can treat the Great Tang Empire as your true belonging and, your home. Home? Old Sycamore was stunned. He hadn't heard of this word for a long time. Tan Xiu said seriously, that's right. The Great Tang Empire will be your home from now on, and I, Tan Xiu, will be your relative. He's my disciple, and you're his older brother, so you're my relative. In the future, as long as I, Tan Xiu, am still alive, you must live for me, Old Sycamore. When I, Tan Xiu, return to the supremacy stage, you must follow me to the supremacy stage. After saying that, he took out a brush, ink, paper, and inkstone from his interspatial ring and wrote thousands of immortal characters in just a quarter of an hour. Then, he handed the paper full of immortal characters to old Sycamore and said in a deep voice, Now, read it, memorize it, and burn it. Old Sycamore took the paper and swept his gaze over the immortal characters. He immediately revealed an excited expression. This was the late-stage cultivation art of the Divine Wood Heavenly Seal art, a cultivation art that could be used to cultivate to the supremacy stage. In the past, he thought that he would forever be trapped in the late stage of the perfected golden immortal stage because he didn't know how to break through to the supremacy stage. Even if he was enlightened, he wouldn't know how to continue cultivating. But now, he didn't need to worry anymore because he had the late-stage cultivation art of the Divine Wood Heavenly Seal art. He could even cultivate to the supremacy stage now. Old Sycamore read the thousands of immortal characters over and over again, memorizing every single one of them by heart. Then, he immediately burned them with Samadhi true fire and respectfully said, Many thanks, Star Cultivation Great Emperor. Tan Xiu shook his head and said, The previous Star Cultivation Great Emperor is already dead, and I'm now the Great Tang Heavenly Emperor. Also, My identity must not be leaked because the current Great Tang Empire is still too weak. When I recover to the supremacy stage in the future, the Great Tang Empire will also become incomparably powerful. At that time, we will wage war against the Inner Pill sect and the Everlasting Palace, and that will be the day Star Cultivation Great Emperor resurrects. Old Sycamore immediately understood the reason why Tan Xiu hid his identity. He nodded and said, I will cultivate as fast as I can and break through to the supremacy stage as soon as possible. Tan Xiu nodded and said, stay in the Misty Spring Ocean and cultivate before your cultivation breaks through to the supremacy stage. Also, I'm looking forward to the day you break through to the supremacy stage because I have an important task for you to do at that time. All right. Old Sycamore nodded solemnly. The Great Tang Empire took root in the Immortal Lyceum and developed. As time passed, it became more and more powerful. In just a short 10 years, the Immortal Lyceum was completely impregnable. In the following 78 years, many powerhouses emerged in the Great Tang Empire, especially the Golden Immortal Stage, which exceeded 30,000 people. In addition, nearly half of the territories of the Ether Immortal Domain in the southeast, the Obsidian Immortal Domain in the west, and the Jadeite Immortal Domain in the north had been occupied by the Great Tang Empire. A large number of powerhouses in these three immortal domains had defected to the Great Tang Empire, and the remaining ones were still stubbornly resisting. But according to the trend of the Great Tang Empire's development, they wouldn't be able to resist for long. 88 years. The Great Tang Empire's first assembly of immortals was held in the Mist Source Island, the headquarters of the Great Tang Empire. 34,650 golden immortals and perfected golden immortals participated in this assembly. In addition, there were also some high-level members of the Great Tang Empire. Although they hadn't reached the golden immortal stage yet, they had all passed their immortal tribulations and became immortals. The total number of people was finally fixed at 35,800. The Majestic and Majestic Palace was a 9th-grade defensive immortal artifact. It was also the highest-grade defensive immortal artifact in the immortal world so far. It occupied an area of a few hundred square kilometers and was surrounded by 7-colored radiance. The Nine Dragons Throne. It was a 9th-grade offensive immortal artifact and was once the throne of Apotheosis Immortal Bella. It was moved from the Immortal Lyceum's palace to this place and became Tan Xiu's personal throne. Tan Xiu sat boldly on the Nine Dragons' throne. His sharp eyes slowly swept across the 35,799 immortals in the hall and said in a clear voice, "This is the first time our Great Tang Empire is holding an assembly of immortals. It also indicates that our Great Tang Empire has thoroughly laid its foundation from today onward. The prestige of my Great Tang Heavenly Emperor and the Great Tang Empire shall be known throughout the immortal world and awe all the immortals. Great Tang Heavenly Emperor." The 35,799 powerhouses of the Great Tang Empire all knelt on one knee, clenched their right fists on their left chest, and roared 9 times. Tan Xiu stood up and nodded with satisfaction. "Please rise, everyone." As everyone stood up again, Tan Xiu asked in a deep voice, "Where's Tang Alang?" "This disciple is here." Tang Alang, who still looked like he was in his 20s, looked much more handsome and refined than before. However, the aura circulating around his body was the immortal qi that only an immortal could possess. Tan Xiu nodded slowly and said in a deep voice, "Soldiers are trained for 1,000 days to be used in a single day. You've cultivated to the immortal stage in less than 100 years, which is already very good. Therefore, you're the commander of the Great Tang Empire's troops and resources from today onward. You must completely occupy the Eternal Immortal Domain in the southeast, the Obsidian Immortal Domain in the west, and the Aquamarine Immortal Domain in the north within 10 years. I want to see the Great Tang Empire's flag planted in every corner of the 4 major immortal domains within 10 years. Tang Alang looked excited and replied in a deep voice, "This disciple understands." Tan Xiu took a deep breath and said in a deep voice, "Everyone, I need all of you to put on your battle robes and embark on the journey. All perfected golden immortals are to command the major legions. Those who obey me will prosper, while those who oppose me will perish. My great Tang Empire will use the blood of our enemies to declare to the entire immortal world that our enemies must die. Chapter 1355. Under Tan Xiu's command, a total of 400 spatial teleportation arrays in the immortal domain under the Great Tang Empire's control began operating. Millions of soldiers of the Great Tang Empire were teleported to various territories and prepared for battle. Obsidian Immortal Domain. Sky-bearing City. The towering and majestic palace was resplendent in gold and jade, exuding a majestic aura. A 10,000-meter-long blade pierced through the clouds and stood at the peak of the palace. Within the palace, the ruler of the Obsidian Immortal Domain, the Obsidian Immortal Father, was sitting cross-legged as he cultivated. For perfected golden immortal stage experts were sitting cross-legged around him, sending streams of immortal energy into his body. Whoosh! A message talisman was sent into the palace and was caught by one of the perfected golden immortals. After reading the message, his expression changed drastically. He stopped injecting immortal energy and said in a deep voice, "Immortal Father, something has happened." Obsidian Immortal Father opened his eyes, and a sharp gaze flashed across his eyes. He raised his arm gently and floated up, asking in a deep voice, "What happened?" The perfected golden immortal said, "There's news from distant Rain City in the east. 3 million immortal soldiers of the Great Tang Empire have arrived at the city. All the territories to the east of distant Rain City have fallen into the hands of the Great Tang Empire. According to City Lord Berserker's calculations, the 3 million immortal soldiers of the Great Tang Empire don't have any plans to attack the city, but they seem to be waiting for some big shot. Once they start attacking, distant Rain City will be breached within half a day, and all of our people will be slaughtered." Obsidian Immortal Father revealed an angry expression and said in a deep voice, "The Great Tang Empire has gone too far. They have occupied the Immortal Lyceum Immortal Domain for the past 100 years, but they still refuse to give up and keep invading our Obsidian Immortal Domain. They are truly ambitious and should be punished." Report. A hurried voice came from outside the palace. Obsidian Immortal Father frowned slightly and appeared outside the palace with the 4 perfected golden immortals. He looked at the black-robed burly man and asked sternly, "What's the matter now?" The burly man said, "Immortal Father, I just received news that the Great Tang Empire has sent a total of 8 million immortal soldiers to attack our Obsidian Immortal Domain, Ether Immortal Domain, and Jadeite Immortal Domain at the same time. There are 2 million soldiers each attacking Ether Immortal Domain and Jadeite Immortal Domain. There are 3 million soldiers attacking Ether Immortal Domain and Jadeite Immortal Domain respectively. Distant Rain City was breached in just 30 minutes, and City Lord Zhang Kuang was heavily wounded. He was rescued by his subordinates before the enemy arrived, and they are rushing towards Sky-bearing City now." Immortal Father Berserker Empire. Berserker Immortal of Immortals. The expression of the perfected golden immortal who had received the communication talisman turned extremely unsightly. He said in a deep voice, "Immortal Wang, there are definitely powerful perfected golden immortals among the 3 million immortal soldiers of the Great Tang Empire attacking distant Rain City. Imaf Obsidian Imaf. But Obof Emperor of Obsidian Mountain of Immortal of Obsidian. Inform all immortals of Obsidian Immortal Domain that those who are willing to work for me, Obsidian Immortal Father, are to head to Obsidian Mountain immediately. We will fight to our heart's content with the army of Great Tang Empire there." That perfected golden immortal's expression changed. He said hurriedly, "Immortal Father, your injuries have not healed yet. If the enemy has a supremacy, I'm afraid," Obsidian Immortal Father snorted. "If the Great Tang Empire has a supremacy, then there is no need for us to fight them. We can just admit defeat and hand over Obsidian Immortal Domain to them. But if the Great Tang Empire doesn't have a supremacy, then they can just leave those 3 million immortal soldiers in my Obsidian Immortal Domain." 2 days later. Obsidian Immortal Domain, Obsidian Mountain. Obsidian Mountain stretched for millions of miles. There were no plants, and even the number of living creatures was pitiful. However, on the west side of Obsidian Mountain, hundreds of thousands of immortals were walking around. Some were in groups of 3 to 5, while others were in groups of hundreds. Everyone's gazes fell on Obsidian Immortal Father, who was sitting cross-legged on the highest stone slope. Boom! A ball of flame rose to the sky from hundreds of thousands of miles away and exploded into a huge ball of fire. In an instant, Obsidian Immortal Father floated up and gazed towards the east. He had 6 perfected golden immortals under him. They were Immortal Supremacy North Peak, Si Wangdu, Ghost-Eyed Azura, Adina, Frenzied Warrior, and Immortal Supremacy Tyro. They appeared behind him one after another and also looked towards the east. Immortal Supremacy North Peak said in a deep voice, "Immortal Father, according to our intelligence, the Great Tang Empire's army will immediately construct spatial teleportation arrays wherever they go. They have formation masters who can construct spatial teleportation arrays." Obsidian Immortal Father said indifferently, "So what? If all the Great Tang Empire's soldiers were to attack, we would still need to avoid them." However, they actually attacked 3 immortal domains at the same time. They will soon experience the disadvantages of splitting up their forces. After saying that, he turned his head and looked at the dozens of immortals under him. He immediately revealed a satisfied expression. In the past, he liked to train his subordinates, which was why he had nurtured a large number of powerhouses. These hundreds of thousands of immortals were his foundation. A few minutes later, Immortal Supremacy North Peak's expression changed, and he said in a deep voice, "They're here." Obsidian Immortal Father looked towards the Great Tang Empire's army that blotted out the sky, and his expression changed slightly. After he took a deep breath, a look of disbelief gradually surfaced in his eyes. "What is that?" Immortal Supremacy North Peak looked at the battle formations formed by people in the eastern horizon, and his eyes revealed a look of shock. This was because he had lived in the immortal world for 7,000 to 8,000 years, but he had never seen such a battle formation formed by immortals. Time passed. When the 3 million-strong army of the Great Tang Empire appeared in front of Obsidian Immortal Father and the hundreds of thousands of immortals under his command, they were all astonished. The 3 million-strong army was divided into 10 separate but closely connected formations. Obsidian Immortal Father's expression turned extremely unsightly. Even though he was a supremacy stage powerhouse, he was still shocked by the Great Tang Empire's battle formation. This was a battle formation of immortals that was formed according to the army formation of a mortal empire. Even though they were dozens of kilometers away from him, the oppressive aura that was mixed with the faint smell of blood made his scalp go numb. How are these immortals? They're simply killing machines. Immortal Supremacy North Peak's face turned slightly pale as he murmured. His words caused the other 5 perfected golden immortals around him to reveal nervous expressions. Their gazes finally stopped at the center of the Great Tang Empire's army, where there was a war chariot pulled by 9 flood dragons. They could clearly see the young man wearing a dragon-patterned battle robe on the war chariot. Beside the young man was a middle-aged man with a straight back and a cold expression. He held a flag in his hand and looked straight at them. Huff! A strange sound came from the flag in the middle-aged man's hand. When the Great Tang Empire's soldiers saw the direction of the flag, they immediately stopped in unison. Tan Xiu had personally led the army this time, and he sneered when he saw the familiar face of Obsidian Immortal Father. He had interacted with Obsidian Immortal Father many times in the past. Even though they weren't friends, they weren't enemies either. However, the Obsidian Immortal Father still owed him a favor that he had yet to repay. Obsidian Immortal Father was shocked by the Great Tang Empire's army before him. He took a deep breath and calmed himself down. After flying a few kilometers, he looked straight at Tan Xiu and said in a deep voice, "Are you the commander of the Great Tang Empire's expedition against my Obsidian Immortal domain?" Tan Xiu floated up and stood on the city wall. He said loudly, "Not only am I the commander of the Great Tang Empire, but I'm also its emperor, the Great Tang Heavenly Emperor. Obsidian Immortal Father, I've heard of your great name before. Now that I've met you, you're indeed extraordinary." Obsidian Immortal Father was shocked and said loudly, "So you're the Great Tang Heavenly Emperor, the peerless genius who once shone brilliantly in the secret palace of the drunken Immortal Supreme. However, don't you know that I'm a powerhouse at the supremacy stage? Do you really think that you can fight against me, Obsidian Immortal Father, with just the soldiers of your great Tang Empire? Tan Xiu said indifferently, let's not talk about the fact that you're injured. Even if you weren't injured, just you and the motley crew behind you aren't worthy of our great Tang Empire's attention. However, since you've already broken through to the supremacy stage and have perfected golden immortal powerhouses by your side, I'll give you 2 chances. Submit to me and you can live. Reject me and you'll die. Obsidian Immortal Father sneered and said, the soldiers of your great Tang Empire look pretty good, but I don't know how strong they are. Since you want to fight, then let's fight. We'll only know who will be the final winner after the battle. I hope that you have powerhouses by your side to protect you. Otherwise, don't blame me for chopping off your head and shattering your soul. Tan Xiu turned his head and nodded at Qin Shaohua, who was holding a flag. Qin Shaohua immediately gave the order to attack through the flag. Immediately, the 2 formations of 300,000 soldiers at the very front took out their defensive immortal artifacts. In just a short moment, they had formed an absolute defense system. Immediately after, the other 4 formations of 300,000 soldiers each took out their immortal artifact crossbow bolts. Each of the bolts was tied with an explosive bomb. Under the command of the flag, they shot at the immortals of the Obsidian Immortal Domain at the same time. The shadows of the arrows that blotted out the sky shot over like a tidal wave. Obsidian Immortal Father's expression changed. After he took out a defensive immortal artifact, the immortal shield instantly expanded and tried to block all the incoming sword shadows. However, the moment the sword shadows at the very front collided with the immortal shield, the explosive bombs on the crossbow bolts exploded. Boom boom boom, the violent explosion shattered the immortal shield into pieces in the blink of an eye. At the same time, the countless arrow shadows cleansed the world, causing it to fall into chaos. Silent Night was working hard to wrap up the immortal world, but she discovered that it was even more difficult than the beginning. Hence, the update speed has slowed down a little. Please understand. While waiting for the update, you can check out the Immortal World's news and pictures that Silent Night has meticulously prepared for you. Silent Night's official WeChat account is JYJS00, or you can search for Silent Night's thoughts on WeChat. Chapter 1356. Obsidian Immortal Father's face was ashen. The immortal shield he summoned exploded, and the recoil caused his blood to boil. He tried his best to block the crossbow bolts, but he was only able to block half of them. The explosion of the lightning bolts caused him to spit out a mouthful of blood, and he was instantly sent flying for dozens of kilometers. Fortunately, he had the help of 6 perfected golden immortals, so he was able to block all the crossbow bolts and lightning bolts. Again, Obsidian Immortal Father and the 6 perfected golden immortals were horrified. They had never imagined that the great Tang Empire's wealth would be this terrifying. This war was simply burning through money. The crossbow bolts and lightning bolts were immortal-grade items. Based on their experience, each crossbow bolt was worth no less than an immortal crystal. 1 wave was 1.2 million bolts, and 2 waves were 2.4 million bolts. This was simply throwing money at their enemies. Obsidian Immortal Father roared, everyone, retreat immediately. You must block these crossbow bolts. I want to see just how many immortal crystals the great Tang Empire has for them to throw around. Whoosh! 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 As his voice fell, the 3rd wave of crossbow bolts followed closely behind, blotting out the sky. Obsidian Immortal Father felt extremely sullen. He was a mighty supremacy stage powerhouse who had fought countless battles, but he had never encountered such a terrifying mass attack. He had once fought tens of thousands of people alone, and that was the highest number of enemies he had ever faced. Moreover, with his strength, he wouldn't be injured even if the crossbow bolts blotted out the sky. However, the lightning bolts on the crossbow bolts posed quite a threat to him. After a total of 10 waves of crossbow bolts, the immortals under Obsidian Immortal Father had already suffered some casualties, and the entire camp was in chaos. Kill! A loud roar came from the great Tang Empire's army. Immediately, 10 armies lined up neatly and charged towards Obsidian Immortal Father and his subordinates. It was like a blade cutting through wheat. Immortal weapons exploded, and blood sprayed everywhere. In just the time it took for an incense stick to burn, Obsidian Immortal Father's subordinates had suffered huge losses. However, Obsidian Immortal Father and his 6 perfected golden immortal subordinates couldn't even take care of themselves. Sable Fiend Scorpio, Celestial Stone Golems, Fire Demon Lion, Golden-Eyed Great Peng, Lupus Monstrous Wolf, and Nether Sea Whale King, 6 perfected golden immortals besieged Obsidian Immortal Father. Although the Obsidian Immortal Father was a supreme being expert, he was injured, and his battle prowess was greatly reduced. Therefore, while Sable Fiend Scorpio and the other 6 perfected golden immortals couldn't inflict heavy damage on Obsidian Immortal Father also couldn't kill them in a short time. As for Obsidian Immortal Father's 6 subordinates, they were surrounded and attacked by 10 perfected golden immortal monster immortals and 3,000 golden immortal realm experts. In just a short while, the 6 perfected golden immortals had suffered considerable injuries. As for Obsidian Immortal Father's hundreds of thousands of subordinates, they were surrounded and attacked by several tens of thousands of golden immortals led by 3 perfected golden immortals and 2 to 3 million immortal soldiers. Buzz, a hazy silhouette appeared beside Tan Xiao out of thin air, and an enormous aura surged towards the battlefield. The expression of Obsidian Immortal Father, who was surrounded and attacked by the 6 perfected golden immortals, changed drastically. He had already gained the upper hand, and he was confident that he could kill these 6 perfected golden immortals if he was given more time. However, that aura, Obsidian Immortal Father's face was filled with grievance as he roared, "Great Tang Heavenly Emperor, you win. I admit defeat and order your Great Tang Empire's army to retreat. Don't kill my subordinates anymore." Tan Xiao smiled faintly and nodded at Qin Shaohua. Immediately, the strange voice resounded again, and the Great Tang Empire's soldiers surrounding Obsidian Immortal Father's subordinates all stopped and retreated in an orderly manner. Fortunately, the perfected golden immortal berserker was almost killed by the 2 Great Tang Empire's perfected golden immortals. Seeing that the powerful enemies had retreated, he heaved a sigh of relief with a bitter expression on his face. Tan Xiao watched as Obsidian Immortal Father and his 6 perfected golden immortal subordinates gathered together. Then, he smiled faintly and said, "Those who submit to me will prosper, while those who oppose me will perish. Obsidian Immortal Father, we've already investigated your background thoroughly before the battle started. Therefore, even if you had twice as many perfected golden immortal subordinates as your subordinates, and even if you weren't injured, you would still be the loser of this battle. In my hometown, there's a saying that goes, 'Know thyself and know thy enemy, and you will emerge victorious in every battle.' Your defeat isn't unjust." A complicated look flashed across Obsidian Immortal Father's eyes. Through the brief battle just now, he had clearly realized that Tan Xiao was right. The number of enemy powerhouses was simply too many. Just the number of perfected golden immortals that had already attacked numbered nearly 20, and the number of golden immortals numbered in the tens of thousands. Such a force was already enough to deal a heavy blow to them. In addition, there was still one more supreme who hadn't attacked yet. Obsidian Immortal Father looked at the old man beside Tan Xiao and said in a deep voice, "Who exactly are you?" "I'm well aware of the number of supremes in the immortal world. I know most of the supremes in the immortal world. As for you, this is the first time I've seen you." Old Sycamore glanced at Tan Xiao and saw that the latter nodded at him. Then, he smiled faintly and said, "I've just broken through to the supremacy stage not long ago, so it's normal that Obsidian Immortal Father doesn't recognize me. I'm just a nobody under the Great Tang Heavenly Emperor, so you can call me Old Sycamore." Obsidian Immortal Father looked at Old Sycamore deeply, then said to Tan Xiao, "The winner takes it all, while the loser takes it all. Since I've already lost this battle, I'm willing to give the Obsidian Immortal Domain to you. If you agree, I'll immediately leave with my subordinates." Tan Xiao waved his hand and smiled. "Obsidian Immortal Father, don't be in such a hurry. Since we've met today, it proves that we're fated. My Great Tang Empire has too few powerhouses, so I'm appreciative of your talent. Why don't you take your subordinates and pledge allegiance to me? From now on, you'll be a member of my great Tang Empire. You can follow me to expand our territory and achieve great things. What do you think? Obsidian Immortal Father sneered. Great Tang Heavenly Emperor, you actually want a supremacy stage immortal to pledge allegiance to you? Could it be that you? Tan Xiu raised his hand and interrupted Obsidian Immortal Father's words. Then, he said indifferently, Supremes in the immortal world are nothing but ants before the heavenly Tao. I have more than one supremacy stage powerhouse among my subordinates. The reason why I recruited you is because I feel that you're a talent worthy of being nurtured in the future. If you sincerely follow me, I can explain some of the supremacy stage Daos to you before you attempt the divinity tribulation. I can also tell you about the divinity tribulation. What did you say? Obsidian Immortal Father's expression changed drastically, and a look of disbelief appeared in his eyes. From Tan Xiu's aura, he could tell that Tan Xiu was definitely not a supremacy, let alone a god. Tan Xiu smiled faintly. Don't think that I'm lying to you. Otherwise, I won't be able to keep you here. Obsidian Immortal Father, 4,000 years ago, when you were still a perfected golden immortal, you were heavily injured in the fallen immortal abyss. Although you managed to break through to the supremacy stage later on, cultivating in the supremacy stage was extremely difficult. If you don't have a great opportunity, you'll be dreaming if you want to face the divinity tribulation. Am I right? Obsidian Immortal Father's pupils contracted, and a wave of shock surged in his heart. Only a handful of people knew about what had happened to him in the fallen immortal abyss, especially the condition of his body. Only a few people knew about it. He had never met this great Tang Heavenly Emperor before him, so how did he know about it? The smile on Tan Xiu's face deepened, and he transmitted his voice. An immortal oath is hard to break. You have regrets in your heart, and it will be a huge obstacle in your path to the supremacy stage. I'm not wrong, am I? Who exactly are you? Obsidian Immortal Father transmitted his voice. Tan Xiu said faintly, you really don't need to know who I am. However, you need to remember that you owe him a favor, and you can return it to me. When you know my true identity in the future, you will be able to cross the hurdle in your heart and reach a perfect state of mind. Then, you can prepare to face the divinity tribulation. A favor? Obsidian Immortal Father instantly understood. The great Tang Heavenly Emperor in front of him already had a deep relationship with the Star Cultivation Great Emperor. It was even possible that he was someone extremely close to the Star Cultivation Great Emperor. A double temptation. This made Obsidian Immortal Father's heart palpitate. He could faintly feel that if he submitted to this great Tang Heavenly Emperor, he might really be able to break through to the late-stage supremacy stage. He might even be able to face the divinity tribulation and take the final step of becoming an immortal. However, he didn't know much about the great Tang Empire, and he knew even less about this great Tang Heavenly Emperor. Why should he believe him? If he followed him, what if the great Tang Heavenly Emperor intentionally sent him to his death in the future? Tan Xiu seemed to have seen through Obsidian Immortal Father's thoughts and said faintly, if you follow me, not only will I not place any restrictions on you, but I will also provide you with all the cultivation resources you need. When the great Tang Empire fights against the other immortal sects or sects, you will have to obey my orders unconditionally and fight alongside the great Tang Empire's warriors. Of course, if you want to become my subordinate, you will have to prove your allegiance to me. Obsidian Immortal Father frowned and asked, what allegiance? Tan Xiu said faintly, the heads of 5 perfected golden immortals. Obsidian Immortal Father's expression changed, and he asked, which 5 perfected golden immortals? Tan Xiu said calmly, I need to wait for your answer now. If you agree to submit to me, then you will naturally know who those 5 perfected golden immortals are. If you don't agree, then don't even mention the allegiance. Obsidian Immortal Father was silent for a moment, and then he said slowly, do I really not need to be restricted if I join the great Tang Empire? Tan Xiu said, as long as you don't bring disaster to the great Tang Empire, then you won't need to be restricted. I hope that you can stay in Mist Source Island and cultivate for now. Once the Great Tang Empire has completely fortified the Obsidium, Ether, and Jadeite immortal domains and connected with the immortal Lyceum, we will form a true superpower empire. If you want to go on an adventure, then go. If you want to travel, then go. If you encounter any danger outside, you can send a message back, and the Great Tang Empire's powerhouses will rush over to help you. Chapter 1357. Tan Xiu quietly observed Obsidium Immortal Father's expression. He discovered that his words had moved him slightly. He immediately concluded, "Join the Great Tang Empire, and you will be one of us. Your business is the Great Tang Empire's business." This is because the number one rule of the Great Tang Empire is unity. Unity. Obsidium Immortal Father's heart shuddered. He slowly turned around and looked at the 3 million soldiers of the Great Tang Empire hovering in midair. He suddenly felt that joining the Great Tang Empire really wasn't a bad thing. If what the Great Tang Heavenly Emperor said was true, then wouldn't they be able to walk unhindered in the immortal world in the future if all the people of the Great Tang Empire were united? I agree to join. But what about my men? Tan Xiu said calmly, I respect their choice. If they choose to join the Great Tang Empire, I will welcome them. If they don't want to join, they can choose to leave. However, if they choose to join the Great Tang Empire, they will no longer be loyal to you, but to me, and to the entire Great Tang Empire. When Obsidium Immortal Father heard this, he looked at the 6 great firmament golden immortals beside him and asked, "What are your choices? Will you choose to join the Great Tang Empire with me? Or choose to leave? Of course, if you choose to leave, I will respect your decision. The strength of the Great Tang Empire has already exceeded my expectations. To be able to obtain the protection of a powerful force without too many restrictions, joining was naturally the best choice." I agree. Immortal Venerate North Peak had already thought about it when Tan Xiu and Obsidium Immortal Father were conversing, so he immediately answered. Join. Agreed. I'm willing, the other 5 answered one after another. Without exception, all of them were willing to join the Great Tang Empire. Tan Xiu nodded and said with a smile, "Welcome, everyone. With your addition, the Great Tang Empire's strength will skyrocket once again. Perhaps it won't be long before we can sweep through the entire immortal world." What? The 6 perfected golden immortals were stunned, and a strange look appeared in their eyes. Sweep across the entire immortal world? What kind of joke was this? The immortal dimension was vast and boundless, and the number of experts was innumerable. In the past millions of years, who was able to unify the immortal dimension? Become the true ruler of the immortal world? Tan Xiu looked at the hundreds of thousands of miserable immortals in the distance and narrowed his eyes. He said indifferently, "It was a war, and life and death are decreed in front of war. Those who survived could choose to join the Great Tang Empire or leave. Those who were gravely injured could receive treatment from the Great Tang Empire, as well as be compensated with money and resources. For those who died in battle, they would be compensated according to the standard of the Great Tang Empire's soldiers who died in battle. If they had relatives, they would receive a large amount of compensation. However, they must leave the immortal domain occupied by the Great Tang Empire." Obsidium Immortal Father, Immortal Paragon North Peak, and the other 3 perfected golden immortals looked at each other and nodded. Obsidium Immortal Father sighed and said, "I'm very pleased with Great Tang Heavenly Emperor's arrangements. Be it injured or dead immortals, I will compensate them with a sum of money." At this moment, Obsidium Immortal Father and the others had finally accepted Tan Xiu and the Great Tang Empire from the bottom of their hearts. Because of Tan Xiu's decision, they felt less guilty for those who had died in battle. 2 years later, the Great Tang Empire had completely occupied the Ether Immortal Domain, the Obsidium Immortal Domain, and the Jadeite Immortal Domain. Following the deployment of a large number of spatial teleportation arrays, the 4 immortal domains were gradually formed with the misty spring ocean as the center. In these 2 years, the Great Tang Empire's prestige had once again awed the billions of immortals in the immortal world. It had even attracted many immortals from other immortal domains to seek shelter. 2 Supremes, dozens of perfected golden immortals, and countless golden immortal powerhouses. After the major forces sent people to investigate, they finally found this information. Thus, everyone who paid attention to the Great Tang Empire realized that another colossus had appeared in the immortal world. It was a force that was not inferior to the super sects in the immortal world. However, Apotheosis Bella was missing from the information they had gathered. The truth was that the Great Tang Empire had 3 supremes and hundreds of perfected golden immortals. In these 2 years, there was another sensational piece of news: Drunken Immortal Supreme's secret palace had disappeared into thin air. After the aura of a supreme appeared for a moment, it disappeared without a trace. Therefore, countless people in the immortal world set their eyes on the former location of Drunken Immortal Supreme's secret palace. Everyone wanted to know who was the lucky person who obtained Drunken Immortal Supreme's inheritance and broke through from the perfected Golden Immortal stage to the Supremacy stage in less than 100 years. Immortal World. East Victory Immortal Domain. A huge continent was suspended in the void. This continent could be ranked in the top 10 among all the large continents in the immortal world. The dreamlike colorful energy barrier enveloped the entire continent. The surrounding 81 planets released bright lights and formed a super-immortal array. Here. This was the location of the Rosefinch Holy Sect. There were more than 1 billion people living on this continent. Except for the mortals of ordinary countries, every immortal who had broken through to the immortal realm was a disciple of the Rosefinch Holy Sect. On a planet millions of kilometers away from the super-immortal array, there was a palace. This palace was the residence of the Inner Pill sect's great emperor Danqing. Tens of thousands of experts from the Inner Pill sect, the Everlasting Palace, the 100 Poisons sect, and the Myriad Swords sect lived on this planet. In other directions, there were millions of immortals from the 4 sects, tightly sealing off the Dongxing immortal domain. Suddenly, in the vast void, a figure appeared out of thin air. As dozens of apocalyptic thunderbolts bombarded the planet, a group of immortals with powerful auras rushed out from the planet. Boom, 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 a terrifying explosion formed a terrifying black hole. As the planet was forcibly blown into ashes, nearly half of the experts from the 4 sects died tragically in the explosion. Only the severely injured Golden Immortals, the lightly injured Perfected Golden Immortals, and the 2 Supremacy Emperors, Great Emperor Danqing and 100 Poisons Devil, survived the explosion. Damn it, who the hell is it? 100 Poisons Devil roared angrily. His consciousness continuously scanned the void in all directions, looking for the enemy. Great Emperor Danqing was wearing a Taoist robe. As a flying knife shot out from his hand, it immediately hit a lightning-fast figure. With a painful groan, the figure was thrown into the super-immortal array of the Dongxing immortal domain. Supremacy. Which supreme has entered the Rosefinch Holy Sect? 100 Poisons Devil came to Great Emperor Danqing's side and asked with crazy killing intent in his eyes. Great Emperor Danqing was silent for a long time. Watching the figure of the other party completely disappear into the super-immortal array, he slowly said, "Star Tears." 100 Poisons Devil stared blankly and then asked in shock, "Star Tears has broken through to the supreme stage?" Great Emperor Danqing nodded. "That's right. It's just that she should have fallen in the battle hundreds of years ago. I didn't expect that not only did she not die, but she also broke through to the supreme stage. It seems that we have another great enemy." 100 Poisons Devil snorted coldly. The Rosefinch Holy Sect is now at the end of the line. All the resources in the Dongxing immortal domain will be exhausted in 1,000 years at most. At that time, they won't even have enough immortal crystals and crystal essences to maintain this super-immortal array. When this super-immortal array collapses by itself, it will be the time for us to slaughter the disciples of the Rosefinch Holy Sect. Great Emperor Danqing said indifferently, "Although many powerhouses have rushed into that super-immortal array in the past hundreds of years, it's extremely difficult for them to come out. As long as we guard here, they will come out and fight us sooner or later." With that said, he looked at his subordinates who had suffered heavy casualties and said coldly, "Do a head count and see how many people we lost this time." Rosefinch Holy Sect. Among the undulating mountains, there were many exquisite palaces. The explosion of the planet in the distant void immediately caused countless Rosefinch Holy Sect powerhouses to fly out and look at the terrifying explosion in the distant void. That's the planet where great Emperor Danqing and 100 Poisons Devil live. Who is so bold to attack that place? A burly figure appeared out of thin air and stood tens of thousands of meters above the ground. He frowned and muttered to himself. No matter who it is, they are our people. A white-robed man with a smile on his face licked his lips. Supreme Star Soul sighed. Every time someone ambushes a powerful enemy, they will suffer huge losses. We can only hide here and watch. We can't go and help them. It's really frustrating. According to the current situation of our Rosefinch Holy Sect, all our resources will be exhausted in a few decades at most. When that time comes, it will be the end of our Rosefinch Holy Sect. The smile on Apotheon Carmen Mist's face gradually faded. She said coldly, if the time comes for our Rosefinch Holy Sect to be annihilated, we will just detonate our immortal souls and drag them down with us. If we want to drag someone down with us, my first choice is Great Emperor Danqing. Another figure appeared out of thin air. He had a stooped figure and a lifeless aura emanated from his body. Supreme Star Soul and Apotheon Carmen Mist immediately bowed respectfully when they saw the old man. Supreme Star Soul smiled bitterly. Ancestor, why did you come out of seclusion? Supreme Star Radiance said indifferently, something big happened outside. How could I? Who dares to break into our Rosefinch Holy Sect's immortal formation? Let me in. Star Tears, who was wearing a black robe and a pair of black combat boots, appeared in front of the three and shouted loudly. Star Tears. The three of them looked excited when they saw Star Tears. Supreme Star Soul instantly soared into the sky and unleashed several immortal arts, opening a gap in the super immortal array. As Star Tears shot out, he immediately asked in a loud voice, Star Tears, where have you been for the past several hundred years? Don't you know that your sister-in-law is very worried about you? Brother. When Star Tears saw Supreme Star Soul again, sparkling tears immediately appeared in her eyes. After hugging Supreme Star Soul, she called out to Apotheon Carmen Mist, sister-in-law. Then, she knelt down in the void and said to Supreme Star Radiance, Ancestor, I've returned. Chapter 1358. Supreme Star Radiance sized up Star Tears with an excited expression on his aged face and said, Good, good, good. It's good that you're back. Tears, you've actually broken through to the supremacy stage. It seems that our Rosefinch Holy Sect's strength against our enemies has increased. Just as Star Tears was about to speak, she saw figures soaring into the sky and flying towards them. She immediately said excitedly, Ancestor, I've indeed broken through to the supremacy stage. However, I still have something important to tell you and Big Brother. Anti-Star Tears. Martial Ant Star Tears. Star, hundreds of figures dashed towards Star Tears at lightning speed. They all sensed her aura and looked pleasantly surprised. Star Tears' gaze slowly swept across each of them. As she took out one interspatial ring after another, she joyfully said, I'm back. What? Hundreds of Rosefinch Holy Sect's upper echelons took the interspatial rings. When their spiritual senses swept through the interspatial rings, they immediately revealed ecstatic expressions. Heavens! So many immortal crystals. So many elixirs. Our Rosefinch Holy Sect is saved. Immortal crystals, crystal essences, and a large number of precious herbs and elixirs. Anti-Star Tears brought back a lot of things. The heavens have eyes. I can see hope now. The eyes of hundreds of Rosefinch Holy Sect's upper echelons became moist. Their bodies trembled with excitement, and some of them couldn't help but roar towards the sky. Supreme Star Radiance and Supreme Star Soul exchanged glances and their expressions changed greatly. What did the Rosefinch Holy Sect lack the most nowadays? Immortal crystals and crystal essences. That was because the amount of immortal crystals and crystal essences left in the Rosefinch Holy Sect's treasury was very low. Even the sect's disciples found it difficult to obtain immortal crystals and crystal essences for their cultivation. Star Tears, follow me. Supreme Star Soul took a deep breath and suppressed the excitement in his heart. After saying that, he flew towards the Rosefinch Holy Sect's conference hall. Supreme Star Radiance and Apotheon Carmen Mist didn't hesitate and followed behind Supreme Star Soul. Star Tears felt warmth in her heart as she looked at her loved ones. Suddenly, as if remembering something, she immediately released Star Luminous and Star Peng from the Heavenly Abode artifact. Seniors, Star Luminous, have broken through to the perfected Golden Immortal Realm. Seniors, Star Peng, have also broken through to the perfected Golden Immortal Realm. The two of them looked at the familiar and amiable faces, and tears flowed from their eyes as they roared. Supreme Star Soul, Supreme Star Radiance, and Apotheon Carmen Mist also discovered that Star Tears had brought back Star Luminous and Star Peng. They were filled with gratification, but they flew towards the conference hall at an even faster speed. After a while. After Star Tears entered the conference hall, she looked at Supreme Star Soul, who was sitting on the Sect Master's throne, and said respectfully, "Sect Master, Star Tears has returned." Supreme Star Soul took a deep breath and asked in a deep voice, "Tell me, where have you been for the past several hundred years?" Many of our friends from the Rosefinch Holy Sect came here in the past several hundred years. I've asked them about you, but they don't know about your whereabouts. Star Tears could hear the concern in her big brother's voice, so she said, "Sect Master, now is not the time to talk about this. I've brought back a lot of things this time. I'll leave them to you for now. You can make arrangements for them." Supreme Star Soul slightly furrowed his brows and said indifferently, "Star Tears, it's good that you're back. As for the things you brought back, our Rosefinch Holy Sect indeed needs them. But it won't be too late to make arrangements for them later." Star Tears took out 6 interspatial rings and handed them over to Supreme Star Soul. She said, "Sect Master, please take a look at these first before making a decision." Supreme Star Soul was silent for a moment. When his spiritual sense swept through the 6 interspatial rings, his tall and sturdy body suddenly stood up with a shocked expression on his dignified face. When he raised his head to look at Star Tears, he asked with difficulty, "These were all obtained by you outside in the past several hundred years?" Star Tears nodded and said, "I obtained all of them. He was also the one who gave them to me and told me to bring them back to you." "Who is he?" Supreme Star Soul hurriedly asked. Star Tears shook her head and said, "Sect Master, please distribute the resources first. We'll talk about the rest later." Supreme Star Soul took a deep breath. A smile climbed onto his face as he laughed heartily. "There's hope for our Rosefinch Holy Sect now. The resources Star Tears brought back are enough for our Rosefinch Holy Sect to last for another 1,000 years. Grand Elder, I'll give all of these to you. Distribute some of them and then send them to the sect's treasury." Venerable Star River excitedly received the 6 interspatial rings. When he saw the things inside, he immediately laughed heartily. After a while, apart from Supreme Star Soul, Supreme Star Radiance, and Apotheon Carmen Mist, only Star Soul was still in the conference hall. Immediately after, Star Radiance waved her arms and unleashed several immortal arts. When the entire hall was enveloped by her array, she looked at the 3 of them. Seeing their confused expressions, she said, "I have 2 things to tell you now that I've returned. These 2 things are related to the life and death of our Rosefinch Holy Sect. Especially the last one. It's very, very important and also a joyous occasion. However," Supreme Star Soul said, "Star Tears, if you have something to say, just say it. Don't keep us in suspense." Star Tears said, "Big brother, you must not spread what I'm about to say. Even in our Rosefinch Holy Sect, only the 4 of us can know about it." Supreme Star Soul was silent for a moment before he slowly nodded and said, "Go ahead. We guarantee that we won't spread it." Star Tears smiled and said, "You've been trapped in the Eastern Victory Immortal Domain, but you've also heard some things from the outside world, right? Especially the things that happened in the past 100 years. Supreme Star Soul nodded and said, "That's right. In the past 100 years, some of our Rosefinch Holy Sect's people who were stranded outside broke through the enemy's blockade and returned to the sect. They also brought back a lot of news from the outside world. Tell me, what have you experienced in the past 100 years?" Star Tears said, "Several hundred years ago, I was severely injured by Shade Demon Zhu Wushou's disciple, Old Man Blackheart. Instead of killing me, he sold me to the convict arena and made me a deathmatch gladiator. For several hundred years, I was trapped in the convict arena and had to fight against other deathmatch gladiators. It wasn't until 90 years ago that someone bought me out of the convict arena." "Who was it?" Supreme Star Soul's expression changed. Although he knew that this sister of his had suffered a lot in the past few hundred years, he still asked about the identity of the benefactor who bought Star Tears. Star Tears said, "He's called the Great Tang Heavenly Emperor." Supreme Star Soul, Supreme Star Radiance, and Apotheon Carmen Mist looked at each other in dismay. They had all heard the legends about the Great Tang Heavenly Emperor in the past 100 years. He was a peerless genius who appeared out of nowhere in the immortal world and an expert who founded the Great Tang Empire. Supreme Star Soul asked, "Since he bought you, why did he let you go so easily?" Star Tears said, "He indeed returned my soul tablet to me and even took me to the secret palace of Drunken Immortal Supreme to snatch that immortal fate. In the end, I obtained the inheritance of Drunken Immortal Supreme with his help and obtained the secret palace left behind by him." "What?" The expressions of the three changed drastically and were filled with disbelief. Although they weren't in the outside world, they had guessed countless times about who had obtained the inheritance of Drunken Immortal Supreme. However, they had never imagined that the person who had obtained the inheritance of Drunken Immortal Supreme turned out to be Star Tears. Apotheon Carmen Mist was the fastest to react. After she recovered from the shock, she said excitedly, "No wonder you were able to break through to the supremacy stage so quickly, little sister Star Tears. It turns out that you obtained the inheritance of Drunken Immortal Supreme. This good news is already the most joyous occasion for our Rosefinch Holy Sect." Star Tears shook her head and said, "Sister-in-law, it's indeed a joyous occasion that I obtained the inheritance of Drunken Immortal Supreme, but it's not the most joyous occasion. Furthermore, it was all thanks to the Great Tang Heavenly Emperor that I was able to obtain the inheritance of Drunken Immortal Supreme. If it weren't for him, let alone obtaining the inheritance of Drunken Immortal Supreme, I'm afraid it would have been difficult for me to survive in the secret palace." Supreme Star Soul asked, "I don't understand. That Great Tang Heavenly Emperor should also be a perfected Golden Immortal, right? Why didn't he obtain the inheritance of Drunken Immortal Supreme? Why would I help you get it?" Star Tears said, "He doesn't need it. Besides, he communicated with Drunken Immortal Supreme. Drunken Immortal Supreme doesn't want him to get his inheritance." Supreme Star Soul asked in disbelief, "He can actually communicate with Supreme Drunken Immortal in the God world? How is this possible?" Star Tears said, "Big brother, it's because he has also crossed the divine tribulation." Countless thoughts flashed through Supreme Star Soul's mind, and he asked in a deep voice, "Who exactly is that Great Tang Heavenly Emperor? If he had passed the divine tribulation, why didn't he ascend to the divine realm? Why did he stay in the immortal world? Instead, he became an immortal of the perfected Golden Immortal realm?" Star Tears said slowly, "It's because he was at his weakest when he crossed the divine tribulation. Two of his best friends ambushed him and killed him in the end. If it wasn't for a wisp of his divine sense entering the other world, his soul would have already been destroyed." Supreme Star Soul suddenly understood and sighed. The moment a supremacy transcends the divine tribulation is indeed the moment they are at their weakest. If they don't have someone they can trust to protect them during this time, it's very easy for them to be ambushed by others. Without the nourishment of the divine light and ascending to the God world, they can't be considered as gods. Star Tears nodded and said, "Indeed." Star Radiance suddenly asked, "Tears, you've said so much, but you still haven't told us who this Great Tang Heavenly Emperor is. I've looked through the information of all the Supremes of the immortal world in the last 100,000 years, but there's no record of this Great Tang Heavenly Emperor. Could it be that he's an expert from an even more ancient era?" Star Tears shook her head and said, no. After saying that, her gaze fell on Apotheon Carmen Mist. Seeing her curious expression, she slowly said, he's not an expert from an even more ancient era, but an expert of our current era. That's because he's my nephew, the son of big brother and sister-in-law, the descendant of your bloodline, ancestor star cultivation great emperor. There will be 3 updates today. Brothers and sisters, will you be surprised or happy? In addition, Quiet Night uploaded a beautiful photo of Tang when she was killing someone on her WeChat official account. That figure, that buttocks, no, those eyes were really mesmerizing. This was Quiet Night's private collection that she had collected for more than 30 years. If you want to see it, please follow Quiet Night's WeChat official account, JYJS00, or directly search for Quiet Night's thoughts on WeChat. Chapter 1359. Star Tears' words exploded in the hearts of Supreme Star Soul, Supreme Star Radiance, and Apotheon Carmen Mist like a clap of thunder. The 3 of them were so dizzy that they couldn't come back to their senses for a long time. What I said is absolutely true. Star Tears' expression turned extremely serious as she looked at the 3's expressions of disbelief. Finally, Supreme Star Soul recovered from his shock and instantly appeared in front of Star Tears. He grabbed her arms and asked word by word, is it really? Xiao. Star Tears nodded heavily. Yes. He didn't die. He came back to life. He even brought a large group of experts back to the immortal world. He didn't die. My son didn't die. Supreme Star Soul had a firm will, but when he heard that his son wasn't dead, 2 streams of tears flowed down his face, wetting his clothes and dripping onto his toes. Boo-hoo, Apotheon Carmen Mist covered her mouth with both hands. Although her face was already covered in tears, she tried her best not to cry out loud. To her, the most important person in her life wasn't her husband, Paragon Star Soul, nor was it her other relatives. Instead, it was her son. In the past, she almost went crazy when she heard that her son had failed to transcend his tribulation and perished. Even so, she still painfully went into seclusion for hundreds of years. It was only when the Rosefinch holy sect was on the brink of destruction that she suppressed the heart-wrenching pain in the deepest part of her soul. Her son was still alive. At this moment, Apotheon Carmen Mist had never felt so happy before. She wouldn't even frown if she had to die for this piece of news. Supreme Star Radiance's eyes flickered as he said in a deep voice, Tears, you just said that Xiao didn't fail to transcend his tribulation and died tragically. Instead, he was ambushed by 2 of his best friends, and in the end, those 2 were Great Emperor Danqing and Zither Demon Jiuyao. Star Tears said, that's right, it was them. She didn't mention Shui Qingqing not because she didn't want to, but because she knew that Shui Qingqing wasn't willing to take revenge on her nephew even if he had let him down in the past. Paragon Star Radiance slowly said, I understand. After Xiao returned to the immortal world, he didn't rush to return to the Rosefinch holy sect. Instead, he concealed his identity and established the Great Tang Empire, constantly developing his forces, all for the sake of revenge. Yes. After Xiao returned to the immortal world, he directly led hundreds of thousands of cultivators who followed him to the immortal world to the Misty Spring Ocean in the Immortal Lyceum's immortal domain, said Star Tears. I also learned later that the master of the Misty Spring Ocean was Apotheon Mu. When I followed Xiao to the Misty Spring Ocean, I learned that his 4 disciples, Apotheon Myriad Notes, Soaring Plum, 9 Immortal Fingers, and Enchantress Yu, were captured and brought to the Heavenly Mountain immortal domain. They set up a trap there and killed any immortals who went to rescue them. Then, Xiao brought the 10 perfected golden immortals he bought from the convict arena and even summoned Apotheosis Bella. After we went to the Heavenly Mountain, we killed Myriad Thunder Supreme and 6 perfected golden immortals from the Everlasting Palace. We saved Apotheon Myriad Notes and the others. I stayed in the secret palace to cultivate for nearly 100 years, while Xiao returned to the Immortal Lyceum. On the way back, I learned about the current situation of the Great Tang Empire through the communication talisman. In just a short 100 years, Xiao has already made the Great Tang Empire incomparably powerful. It's not inferior to any of the superpowers in the immortal world. Supreme Star Radiance shook his head and said, "Tears, your words are a bit exaggerated. Those superpowers in the immortal world have been accumulating power for tens of thousands of years or even hundreds of thousands of years. How can Xiao be compared to those superpowers when he established the Great Tang Empire less than 100 years ago?" Star Tears said, "Ancestor, the Great Tang Empire now has 3 supremes. They are Apotheosis Bella, Old Sycamore, and Obsidium Immortal Father. There were close to 100 perfected Golden Immortals here. As for Golden Immortals, there are nearly 40,000 of them. There are also countless Celestial Immortals and Profound Immortals. So many." Supreme Star Radiance was shocked. Even Supreme Star Soul had a look of disbelief on his face. Supreme Star Soul muttered, "Xiao, how did he do it?" Star Tears said, "Big brother, don't you know Xiao's ability? I've never heard of anyone more powerful than him in the entire immortal world. Be it in the distant past or the current era." A satisfied smile appeared on Supreme Star Soul's face when he heard this. He laughed heartily and said, "That's right. He's worthy of being my son. Xiao is still alive, and his cultivation is still comparable to a perfected Golden Immortal. This is already very good. If he's given some time, he'll definitely be able to return to the supremacy stage. His cultivation speed will definitely reach an unimaginable level." Star Tears sighed. "When Xiao breaks through to the supremacy stage, I'm afraid we will have 7 supremacy stage powerhouses on our side. We might even have 8. Supreme Star Soul was surprised. "Who else?" Star Tears said, "Guyan, Supreme Star Soul was puzzled. "Why does this name sound so familiar? I think I've heard of it somewhere before." Apotheosis Carmen Mist was pleasantly surprised. "Little Yen, Xiao's little female disciple?" Star Tears nodded with a smile. "That's right. Little Yen, Actually, she has another name. I believe you've all heard of it." "What name?" Apotheosis Carmen Mist asked curiously. Star Tears said, "Rakshasa Demonis, also known as Rakshasa Immortal Monarch." Supreme Star Soul was surprised. "It's her." Star Tears nodded. "That's right. It's her. She's been searching for Xiao ever since she found out that something happened to him. I only found out later that she was the one who helped us when our Rosefinch holy sect was in danger. However, she didn't acknowledge us. Instead, she snuck into Heavenly Emperor Tianji's place and obtained a secret divine ability from him. Then, she seemingly tore open a spatial rift and used the divine ability of time and space to search for Xiao's soul imprint. Finally, she found the low-level space where Xiao was." Supreme Star Soul sighed. "This child is a good child." The corners of Star Tears' mouth curled into a smile. "There's something that I'm sure you've never thought of." Supreme Star Soul asked curiously, "What is it?" Star Tears smiled. Xiao reincarnated into the immortal world as a wisp of his divine sense. He originally had a life imprint in that small world. Therefore, he also has parents and relatives. In addition, our Xiao is no longer as one-track minded as he used to be. He already has more than a dozen women, and all of them are peerless beauties." "What?" Supreme Star Soul wasn't surprised that his son still had relatives. Back when his son hadn't fully grown up, he had already noticed that there was something wrong with his son. However, he didn't ask about it. Perhaps it was because of his relatives in that small world. Moreover, since a wisp of his immortal soul had appeared in that small world, he naturally needed a life vessel. However, he was surprised that his son had found so many wives. This was too strange. Suddenly, Supreme Star Soul thought of someone and asked in a deep voice, "What about Xue Qingcheng? Rumor has it that she committed suicide when Xiao failed his tribulation and his soul dissipated. Is that true?" The smile on Star Tears' face faded. After a moment of silence, she slowly said, "Big brother, you don't have to ask about Xiu's feelings." Xue Qingqing heard him. Even though she had no choice, Xiu has already told me that the relationship between him and Xue Qingqing is over. Therefore, our Rosefinch holy sect no longer has a woman called Xue Qingqing. Yeah. Supreme Star Soul nodded silently, as if he had understood something. Immortal World, Misty Spring Ocean. Tang Xiu was sitting cross-legged inside the palace, silently reading an immortal book. Suddenly, his expression moved and he looked toward the door. He immediately saw a handsome youth who had 60% to 70% resemblance to him. "Tang Xing, come." Tan Xiu smiled and waved his hand. Tang Xing walked towards Tan Xiu with a smile and sat cross-legged. "Big brother, I need your help with something." Tan Xiu smiled. "You came back from the Azure Dragon Legion, so I believe you must have something for me. Tell me, what is it?" Tang Xing smiled. "I heard that you're going to Nifa's Abyss. I want to go with you." Tan Xiu's expression changed. He shook his head. "If that's what you came for, I'm afraid you'll have to leave in disappointment. Nifa's Abyss is very terrifying. Even Supremes have to be careful when they enter. The slightest carelessness will cause them to fall into eternal damnation. Those who rushed in were only perfected golden immortals and supreme being experts. Even golden immortals don't dare to rashly enter. You've just broken through to the immortal realm, so you can't go with me." Tang Xing said, "Don't I have you? I won't encounter any danger if you take me with you." Tan Xiu shook his head. "You'll become a burden to me if I take you with me. The risk factor will increase a lot. You don't want me to fall in Nifa's Abyss, do you, brother?" This. Tang Xing gave it a thought and immediately shook his head in disappointment. "You're my big brother, so I naturally don't want anything to happen to you." "Fine. I'm not strong enough now, so I won't be a burden to you. But big brother, you must promise me that you'll take me to Nifa's Abyss after I break through to the perfected golden immortal stage. I want to see how chaotic the legendary Nifa city is." Tan Xiu nodded. "I'll definitely be able to cultivate to the supremacy stage after you break through to the perfected golden immortal stage. I'll take you there and the risk factor won't be too much. I promise you." Tang Xing smiled and nodded. "Let's end this topic. Let's talk about something else, shall we? Is there anything else you want to talk about?" asked Tan Xiu. Tang Xing forced a smile and said, "Mom has been forcing me to get married recently. I'm not even 100 years old yet she wants me to get married and have children. She even used you as a bad example, saying that I can't be like you and still have no children. You don't know this, big brother, but I can still receive message tokens from time to time when I'm fighting with the army." Chapter 1360. Tan Xiu looked at his younger brother, Tang Xing, with a faint smile. He had been forced to marry and have children countless times in the past. Now that his younger brother had grown up, his mother had finally shifted the pressure from him to Tang Xing. Tan Xiu smiled inwardly as he watched him leave. Not having to be pressured is also a kind of happiness, isn't it? Nifa's Abyss. Tan Xiu had planned to go there many years ago because the resources he needed for cultivation were related to many items from the demon world. Even though he didn't lack demon stones and demon crystals now, there were many more cultivation resources that could only be obtained in the Nifa's Abyss. Cultivation and breakthrough. This was an urgent matter for Tan Xiu because he was the emperor of the Great Tang Empire. Currently, he could only fight with early-stage perfected golden immortals at most. Facing mid-stage perfected golden immortals, he might be able to kill them with a sneak attack, but he had no chance of winning in a head-on battle. "Master." A beautiful figure floated into the room. Gu Yan, smiled and held a golden lotus that was emitting a golden light. She came to Tan Xiu and said, "The Lotus Sea of the Aquamarine Immortal Domain. The Golden Lotus King has shown signs of transforming. Now is the best time to consume it." Tan Xiu's gaze fell on the golden lotus. He could faintly hear a sobbing sound coming from it. After a while, Tan Xiu took the golden lotus in his hand and probed its interior with his divine sense. He easily broke through the external obstruction of the golden lotus and entered a golden space. The miniature golden person seemed to be draped in starlight as it sat in the golden space, crying while hugging its knees. Drops of viscous golden liquid turned into specks of starlight and floated in the golden space. The soul has been born, and the spiritual wisdom has been awakened. Tan Xiu noticed that the thumb-sized golden person raised its head and looked at his divine sense. He immediately smiled and returned his divine sense to the golden space. Then, he injected his primal chaos energy into the golden lotus. The ancient immortal incantation turned into golden immortal runes that flowed like water and merged with the golden space. The tiny, golden person blinked and immediately stopped crying. She sat down and allowed the chaotic force to pour into her sea of consciousness. She also rapidly absorbed the golden inscriptions from the immortal mantra, as if they were nutrients brought to her by a delicacy. Gu Yan'er stood in front of Tan Xiu, watching Tan Xiu's actions. A vexed expression appeared on her face. She stomped her feet, turned around, and floated away, leaving behind only a murmur in the room. "You're such a good person," she muttered. "He actually converted such a great treasure into a demon. How boring." Tan Xiu glanced at Gu Yan'er's back as she left, and the corners of his lips curled up slightly. After 3 days, Tan Xiu felt that nearly half of the chaotic force in his body had been consumed. Only then did he heave a sigh of relief. He stopped transferring the chaotic force and said with a smile, "Little golden lotus, why didn't you thank me for giving you the immortal fate?" The golden lotus turned into a hazy golden light, and then a small, naked girl appeared in front of Tan Xiu. Her skin was very white, and she looked very cute. Unfortunately, she was only a dozen centimeters tall, and she looked very beautiful when she smiled. "Thank you, Master." Tan Xiu smiled. "You're quite smart. You actually recognized me as your master. I've already taught you the shape-shifting technique. Put on your clothes." "Yes." The little girl turned around and immediately put on a battle robe similar to the one Tan Xiu was wearing. The only difference was the pattern. Tan Xiu's battle robe had 9 golden dragons, while the little girl's robe had 9 golden lotuses. Tan Xiu smiled. "The golden lotus of war happens to be in troubled times. You'll be called Battle Lotus from now on. Go find Andy. You'll cultivate with her from now on." Battle Lotus, who had just been bestowed a name, asked, "Who is Andy? Will she treat Battle Lotus well?" Tan Xiu said, "Andy is my woman. She'll treat you very well. She'll be here soon after you go outside the palace." "Go." "Yes, Master." Zhang Lian agreed obediently and flew outside. The golden lotus shape-shifting technique. This was just a small interlude for Tan Xiu. He was willing to transform any plant that possessed spiritual intelligence into a human. This was because the Great Tang Empire's greatest fighting force was the 30,000-old monstrous monster immortals. Several months later, Tan Xiu announced to the public that he would go into seclusion and handed over the Great Tang Empire's affairs to Gu Yan'er and Apotheosis Bella. Then, he quietly left the misty spring ocean. This trip to Nifa's abyss was fraught with dangers, so he brought 4 perfected golden immortals and old Sycamore, who was at the supremacy stage. 2 years later, Tan Xiu's group of 6 arrived at Nifa's immortal domain. Nifa's immortal domain was hundreds of immortal domains away from Immortal Lyceum domain. It was located in an extremely desolate place in the immortal world. Even the nearest immortal domain would require a supreme being expert to use greater spatial transference and travel for several months. "Master, the entrance to Nifa's abyss is right in front of us. I've been to Nifa's abyss before. It's extremely chaotic inside, and we often encounter robberies at the entrance," Siwei Monarch said while looking at the black vortex ahead. A smile appeared on the corner of Tang Xiu's mouth. "I was once robbed at the entrance of Nifa's abyss. However, I ended up robbing the other party of countless treasures instead. Let's go." Although we didn't bring much wealth with us from the great Tang Empire, we've made a small fortune during these 2 years. It should be enough for us to spend in Nifa's abyss. A small fortune. Seaway Monarch's mouth twitched a few times, and he turned to the side speechlessly. In fact, with their speed, it would only take them a year at most to reach this place from Immortal Lyceum Domain. However, this master of his had done many robberies in order to get some wealth. Especially the evil cultivators they encountered along the way. Not only did they lose all their wealth, but they also lost their lives. He estimated that the wealth he had looted over the past 2 years, if measured by crystal essences, was at least 100 million. Soon, the two of them were thrown into the black vortex. After the spatial teleportation, the two of them appeared in a gray world. There were no sun, moon, or stars in the sky. It was a vast dusky sky. The ground was made of extremely hard black soil. All kinds of strange plants grew around them, and most of them were black and red. Nifa's abyss had a total of 9 layers, and the area of each layer was no smaller than a large immortal domain. The natives of the first layer, as well as cultivators from the immortal world, demon world, monster world, spirit world, and Azura world, weren't very strong. The danger factor here was also relatively low. The higher the layer, the more dangerous it was, and the stronger the cultivators would be. Speaking of which, Nifa's abyss didn't belong to the immortal world, nor did it belong to any world. Instead, it was an independent 9-layer space that was connected to other worlds by powerful beings. Therefore, this place was very chaotic, and it was simply a paradise for countless sinners. Here, good people would be devoured until not even their bones were left. The story of the farmer and the snake would never happen here. Master, which layer are we going to? Seaway Monarch asked Tan Xiu after seeing that there were no cultivators nearby. Tan Xiu said, the 9th layer, Nifa's city. Seaway Monarch held his breath and smiled bitterly. Master, why don't you let Supreme Wudong follow you? I'll return to the heavenly abode artifact. Tan Xiu couldn't help but laugh. Don't worry. Although the journey from the 6th to the 9th layer will be very dangerous, we won't be ambushed by powerful enemies. We won't be able to let Old Sycamore and the others out in time. When we reach the 6th layer, we can stay in the Lost Nifa's forest for a while. There are experts from the spirit world selling Myriad Spirit Immortal Wine there. Don't you want to try it? Myriad Spirit Immortal Wine? Seaway Monarch couldn't help but swallow a mouthful of saliva. He smiled. I've tasted it before, and I spent 1 million immortal crystals just to buy a cup. However, the taste is indeed top-notch, and it's very beneficial to one's body. Tan Xiu smiled faintly. It's been thousands of years since I last tasted the Myriad Spirit Immortal Wine. There are countless wines in the immortal world, but there are only a few that can compare to the Myriad Spirit Immortal Wine. It was very easy. The two arrived at the entrance to the 2nd layer a few days later. What the two of them didn't expect was that they would be stopped at the entrance even though they hadn't encountered any danger or trouble along the way. Moreover, the one who stopped them was a middle-aged man with an unkempt beard and a broken saber on his back. I'm selling a saber. The man was only about 1.5 meters tall, and his tone was particularly stiff. Tan Xiu couldn't help but laugh when he saw the man's attitude. Are you trying to force me to buy and sell? Yes. The middle-aged man slowly untied the broken saber on his back and handed it to Tan Xiu, 20 million crystal essences, not one less. Tan Xiu rolled his eyes and snappily said, do you think we're fools? A broken saber is actually sold for a sky-high price of 20 million crystal essences. Don't you know that a 9th grade immortal artifact is worth about this price? Not to mention that this is just a broken saber. The middle-aged man said, I need crystal essences. You won't lose out if you buy it. Tan Xiu snorted coldly. If you want crystal essences, that's your business. What does it have to do with me? If you want to do business with me, you need me to appraise your item. If I think it's worth that much, I'm naturally willing to trade with you. But if you don't think it's worth it, you won't get a single immortal stone from me unless you have the ability to put a saber on my neck." With that said, he took the broken saber and infused it with his primal chaos force. What shocked him was that the primal chaos force he cultivated was easily infused into the broken saber, unlike other immortal artifacts where there was a sense of resistance. There were only two possibilities in this situation. The first one was to refine an immortal artifact and then nurture it in the body for a long time so that it would develop spiritual intelligence and become one's own personal immortal artifact. The second one was like the divine sword he had obtained. After some refinement, it would become his own personal immortal artifact and completely recognize him as its master. Today's third chapter is over. Brothers and sisters, let's start the monthly votes. For every increase in the monthly votes, Quiet Night will have one more chapter tomorrow. _. Chapter 1361. Until now, the most powerful weapon Tan Shio had ever seen was the divine sword in his body. Then there was the brushwood blade that once appeared briefly in the immortal world and disappeared without a trace. Tens of thousands of powerful weapons were recorded in the immortal world's divine weapon register. The top 10 were all divine weapons, but they were all in the hands of the supreme powerhouses of the superpowers and were rarely seen. The heavenly star sword he once used was a divine weapon, but it was destroyed during his divine tribulation. "What's its name?" Tan Shio looked up at the middle-aged man and asked slowly. "I don't know," the middle-aged man said. Tan Shio narrowed his eyes and asked again, "How did you get it?" "Demon King's Cave." Tan Shio was slightly shocked and looked at the middle-aged man with a different gaze. Demon King's Cave was a very terrifying place in the 9th level of Nifa's abyss. Even an honorable powerhouse would die if he entered. He once tried to enter the Demon King's Cave after becoming an honorable to obtain the inheritance treasure left behind by Demon King Wu Hen, but he was seriously injured halfway and had no choice but to retreat. Demon King Wu Hen. He was the most terrifying powerhouse in the demon world hundreds of thousands of years ago. It wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that he was the strongest powerhouse in the demon world at that time. Moreover, his cultivation speed was extremely fast. He successfully passed his divine tribulation in just 8,000 years and ascended to the divine world. Tan Shio looked deeply at the middle-aged man and asked, "You entered the Demon King's cave? If I'm not wrong, you haven't even reached the honorable realm, right?" The middle-aged man said, "Great overarching golden immortal, but I did enter." Tan Shio gave a thumbs up and praised, "It's indeed the will of the heavens to have such an immortal fate. Let me guess one last time. You didn't enter the Demon King's cave for the inheritance treasure of Demon King Wu Hen, but to commit suicide, right?" "Yes." The middle-aged man's tone was still cold. Tan Shio shook his head and sighed, "A bad life is better than a good death. Why do you have to take things so hard? Fine, I'll buy this broken blade. But you need to answer my last question. You should have met many immortals who entered Nifa's abyss, right? Is there no one buying it?" The middle-aged man said, "Many. They are all very poor." Tan Shio couldn't help laughing. 20 million crystal essences was not a small amount for a perfected golden immortal, and it was even possible to purchase a perfected golden immortal gladiator with 20 million crystal essences in the convict arena. Only a supreme being would be able to possess such a massive amount of wealth. Immediately after, Tan Shio took out 20 million crystal essences from his spatial ring and handed them to the middle-aged man. He smiled and asked, "Aren't you afraid that we will kill you and snatch your broken saber? In that case, I can save 20 million crystal essences." The middle-aged man said, "I'm afraid, but I won't stop until I die." Tan Shio gave him a deep look before putting the broken sword into his spatial ring. He asked with a smile, "One last question. How should I address you?" The middle-aged man raised his eyelids and was silent for a while before he slowly said, "I'll tell you since you bought the broken saber. My name is Eagle." "Eagle?" Just the word eagle. A strange light flashed in Tan Shio's eyes as he asked. "Understood." Having said that, the middle-aged man turned around and walked toward the entrance of the second floor. In nearly an instant, he disappeared into the black cloud vortex. Tan Xiu squinted his eyes and turned to look at Seaway Monarch, asking lightly, "Have you ever heard of this name?" A complicated expression appeared on Seaway Monarch's face as he nodded and said, "Not only have I heard of it, but it's like a thunderclap piercing my ears. 4,000 years ago, there was a golden celestial expert called Eagle who appeared out of nowhere. In just 8 years, he killed dozens of golden celestials and 8 perfected golden celestials. On average, he killed 1 perfected golden celestial every year. 3,000 years ago, Eagle single-handedly slaughtered 18,000 demons in the Mirage Sea immortal domain, including more than a dozen perfected golden immortals. At that time, Eagle had already broken through to the perfected golden immortal stage. 1,800 years ago, Eagle killed his way into the Sea of Death alone for the sake of a woman and slaughtered thousands of Death God Emperor's subordinates. He even fought with Death God Emperor, who was at the supremacy stage, for several months before he was finally gravely injured and disappeared without a trace. Each and every one of his feats is legendary. In all of the immortal worlds, there's only one person who's more legendary than the Eagle. No one else can compare. Tan Xiu's expression shifted and he asked, "Who is that person you're talking about?" "Star Cultivation Great Emperor," answered Seaway Monarch. Tan Xiu couldn't help laughing inwardly. He didn't expect that Seaway Monarch would have such a high evaluation of him. However, he had indeed gone through many hardships to become a supremacy in the immortal world. He had gone through countless battles and stepped on the corpses of countless powerhouses to become a supreme. Let's go and watch the show with him. I really want to know why he needs so many crystal essences. Immediately after, the duo plunged into the black cloud vortex. The second floor of Nifa's abyss was filled with countless densely packed black stone forests. The black stones varied in length, with the tallest being tens of thousands of meters tall and the shortest being only a few meters tall. They decorated this world in a particularly unique way. Tan Xiu and Seaway Monarch followed behind Eagle. They didn't hide or conceal their figures and just followed him boldly. The path ahead. Eagle encountered several troubles. The natives of Nifa's abyss tried to kill him and rob him of his belongings. The experts of the demon world besieged him and even the experts of the demon world attacked him. In the end, every siege was easily resolved by him, and all the enemies who besieged him were all killed by him. Tan Xiu and Seaway Monarch didn't help him. They simply looked like they were watching a good show. During this time, Tan Xiu took out the broken blade he had bought from Eagle and continuously injected chaotic energy into it to nourish and repair the cracks on it. He was trying to comprehend the profound mysteries of the broken blade. It didn't have a blade soul, but it was extremely sharp. The chaotic energy wasn't obstructed and he could control it with ease. Tan Xiu tried to control it with his divine sense and found that it was exceptionally easy. It was as if he was controlling a thin needle that was almost weightless. When he infused his divine sense into the blade, he discovered that there were needle-tip-sized specks of light within it. An incomparably mysterious aura was emitted from these specks of light. Even though it's a broken blade, its quality should be higher than the divine weapon I used to own, the Heavenly Star Sword. I'm afraid it's not inferior to the top 10 divine weapons on the divine weapon list. If I can repair this broken blade and nurture a divine soul within it, I'm afraid its grade will be even higher than I imagined. I'm very proficient in smithing, but I don't have the slightest confidence that I can repair this broken blade. I also don't know how to choose the materials I need. Therefore, I'm afraid that I can only dream about repairing this broken blade. It's impossible to do it. The third floor of Nifa's abyss. The fourth floor of Nifa's abyss. The fifth layer of the Nifa's abyss. When Tan Xiu and Seaway Monarch followed Eagle to the sixth layer of the Nifa's abyss, they discovered that Eagle wasn't heading towards the entrance of the seventh layer. Instead, he was looking in the direction of the lost Nifa's forest. Along the way, the three of them encountered demons and monsters that harbored malicious intentions, but they weren't afraid at all. The toll is based on 10 people. Each person has to pay 10 immortal crystals, 10 demon crystals, 10 demon crystals, 10 spirit crystals, or 10 black crystals. Those who pay can enter the lost Nepha's forest, but those who don't pay are forbidden from entering. Anyone who dares to force their way through will be killed without mercy. On the only path leading to the lost Nepha's forest, there was a demon sovereign, a demon immortal, and 4 perfected golden immortals. A total of 6 cultivators had set up roadblocks and were collecting toll fees from those who tried to enter. Tan Xiu watched as Eagle paid 10 immortal crystals on his own initiative and quietly entered. He immediately took out 20 immortal crystals and handed them to the 6 cultivators before leading Seaway Monarch into the lost Nepha's forest. Inside the lost Nepha's forest, the black pine trees were all 10,000 feet tall. There was no order to them at all, but every single one of them was exceptionally sturdy. There was a construction-type immortal artifact or an open-air stall every 10,000 meters. Many of the demons and monsters that came to explore the Nepha's immortal domain didn't have any enmity with each other. They strolled around casually and picked out the treasures they liked from the various shops and stalls. The further in they went, the fewer shops and stalls there were, and the distance between them also grew larger. Tan Xiu and Seaway Monarch followed Eagle deeper into the forest. 2 days later, they saw Eagle stop in front of a shop. Old Demon Blackheart. Eagle's voice was exceptionally cold. An ugly, burly devil world powerhouse slowly walked out of the shop. He rolled his eyes, and when he saw the eagle, he raised his eyebrows and asked with a smile, "Did you bring the 24 million crystal essences?" Eagle threw out an interspatial ring and said, "Give me the soul condensation dew." The demon realm expert counted the number of crystal essences and gave a thumbs up. He praised, "You only had 3 million crystal essences a decade ago. I didn't expect you to collect all 24 million crystal essences in such a short time. I admire you, truly admire you. This is the soul condensation dew you need." Ying's hand moved as fast as lightning. After receiving the soul-consolidating nectar, a look of excitement appeared on his face as he cupped his fists towards the demon realm cultivator. "The deal is done. Now, can you tell me where I can purchase the soul-consolidating technique?" The demon realm expert pointed to the depths of the forest and said with a smile, "You'll see a shop with a signboard that says Demon Soul Palace if you walk forward for 10,000 miles. The boss there specializes in selling all kinds of immortal books and secret arts. The demon realm, monster realm, immortal realm, spirit realm. In short, they have all kinds of systems and secret arts." "Thank you." Eagle nodded and didn't even look at Tan Xiu and Seaway Monarch behind him. He acted as if the two of them didn't exist and rushed toward the depths of the Nepha's forest. 10,000 miles wasn't too far for him. He rushed at full speed and appeared in front of the Demon Soul Palace's signboard in just a dozen breaths. I'll continue with the 3rd chapter today. I hope for monthly votes and recommendation votes. Chapter 1362. Eagle's expression had always been cold, and his actions were extremely purposeful. However, when he stood in front of the signboard that read, Demon Soul Palace, a hint of hesitation appeared on his cold face and he didn't take even half a step inside. Only then did he turn his head to look at Tan Xiu and Seaway Monarch. "Lend me 10 million crystal essences for a favor." Eagle remained silent for a full quarter of an hour before he slowly transmitted his voice to Tan Xiu. Tan Xiu took out 10 million crystal essences from his interspatial ring and stored them in an independent interspatial ring before flicking it over to Eagle. Eagle took the interspatial ring and transmitted his voice again. "May I know your name, sir?" "Great Tang Heavenly Emperor." "I'll remember it." Eagle took a deep breath and stepped into the Demon Soul Palace's entrance. He quickly arrived at the counter inside and looked at the drowsy old man inside. Then, he said in a deep voice, "I want to buy the soul consolidation art." The drowsy old man opened his eyes reluctantly and stretched his body lazily. Then, he said indifferently, "I'll exchange it for an 8th grade immortal artifact." Eagle frowned and said, "I'll use crystal essences to buy it." The old man shook his head and said, "The soul consolidation art can only be bartered. You can't buy it with money." "Barter? An 8th grade immortal artifact?" Eagle didn't know that the Demon Soul Palace had such a rule. He didn't have an 8th grade immortal artifact on him, and he only had a 3rd grade immortal artifact. In order to buy the soul consolidation ambrosia, he had already sold all his high-grade immortal artifacts. After pondering for a long time, Eagle slowly turned his head and looked at Tan Xiu, who had followed him in. A bitter smile appeared on his face as he transmitted his voice again. Lend me an 8th grade immortal artifact and I'll owe you 2 favors. Come with me. Tan Xiu had already figured out Eagle's purpose. He sighed inwardly and turned around to leave. When he came to an empty jungle nearby, he looked at Eagle who was following him and calmly said, "You bought the soul consolidation dew and also tried to buy the soul consolidation art. You want to consolidate someone's scattered immortal soul, right?" Eagle said, "That's right." Tan Xiu took out a blank jade slip and quickly inscribed a soul consolidation art on it. Then, he threw it to Eagle and said, "If you need a soul consolidation art, why use a grade 8 immortal artifact to exchange? In fact, if you had asked me in advance for the soul consolidating dew, I would have been able to refine it for you, and the cost would not even be a tenth of what you had spent." Eagle quickly read through the soul consolidation technique in the jade slip. After he finished reading and memorizing the entire technique, a look of gratitude appeared on his face. He looked deeply at Tan Xiu and asked, "You're very strong." Tan Xiu smiled faintly and said, "It's beyond your imagination." Eagle took a deep breath and asked again, "If you use the soul consolidating dew and the soul consolidating art, what are the chances of success?" 100%. Tan Xiu said calmly. 100%. Eagle's heart was pounding, his eyes filled with disbelief. He had done some research on this before. Even a supremacy realm expert who had mastered the soul consolidating dew and the soul consolidation art only had an 80% chance of success. But this young man in front of him actually said he had a 100% chance. Doesn't that mean there's no risk? Tan Xiu looked at Eagle's expression and said calmly, "I've attempted to consolidate my soul no less than 100 times. In the first 10 attempts, I failed 3 times. After that, I succeeded all 3 times." Eagle stared at Tan Xiu and said, "Following you is very dangerous." Tan Xiu calmly said, "Powerhouses need to tread on seas of blood and mountains of corpses to move forward. They need to wander on the edge of life and death countless times. Only then can they hone themselves into a sharp knife or a sharp sword. Only then will they be able to overcome all obstacles, brave the wind and break through the waves to reach the supremacy realm, to reach godhood." Eagle took out the soul consolidating dew and handed it to Tan Xiu, saying, "Help me consolidate my soul and this life will be yours." Tan Xiu didn't take it directly but calmly asked, "You've already obtained the soul consolidating dew and the soul consolidation art, so why don't you consolidate your soul yourself? You should know that if I help you consolidate your soul, the person who regathers it will be infected with a trace of my aura. If I die in the future, she will definitely be affected." Eagle said solemnly, "But if you can become a godhood in the future, she can at least break through to the perfected golden immortal realm. Moreover, I don't have 100% confidence, I can't even guarantee a 60% chance of success. Moreover, if she's infected with your aura, just that karma alone can make me loyal and devoted to you." Tan Xiu asked in a deep voice, "Tell me, who is she?" Eagle said, "Fairy Flamecaller, my wife." Tan Xiu took out a long saber from his interspatial ring. This divine weapon of the Diablo Precantator clan was definitely not inferior to an 8th grade immortal artifact in terms of grade. After handing it to him, Tan Xiu said solemnly, "From today onwards, you will be my saber. You will kill wherever I point. Can you do that?" Eagle's heart trembled and he immediately swore an immortal oath. Tan Xiu nodded with satisfaction and said indifferently, "Nifa's abyss isn't a good place to consolidate a soul. Help me do some things first. After we leave Nifa's abyss, I'll help Fairy Flamecaller condense her soul." "All right." Although Eagle was eager to see his wife, he knew that consolidating a soul wasn't a trivial matter and that it was indeed inappropriate to do so in Nifa's abyss. If he encountered any trouble or danger during the process, all his previous efforts would go to waste. Not only would he fail to recondense his wife's immortal soul, but it would also cause her soul to scatter. Seaway Monarch had always been by Tang Xiu's side. Never in his wildest dreams did he expect that Tang Xiu would actually be able to take the famous eagle under his command. More importantly, it was done in such a relaxed manner. Great luck. This was the only explanation Seaway Monarch could come up with. Otherwise, it would be very difficult for him to describe what had happened to the great Tang Heavenly Emperor. Master, we've been targeted. Seaway Monarch suppressed the heartfelt admiration in his heart and only spoke in a low voice after seeing that Tan Xiu and Eagle had finished their discussion. Tan Xiu nodded and said, I've long since noticed that there are two groups of people. They've been following us for some time now. Seaway Monarch asked, what should we do now? Should we get rid of them? Tan Xiu shook his head and smiled faintly. There's no need to rush. Although I haven't been to the Lost Nephas forest for a long time, I still remember the rules here. Regardless of race or cultivation level, no one is allowed to fight here. Otherwise, they will be attacked by the group until they are killed. There are many hidden dragons and crouching tigers in the Lost Nephas forest, and no one can guarantee that there are no super powerhouses hiding here. I don't want to die yet, so let's deal with those who follow us outside. Understood. Seaway Monarch nodded respectfully. Eagle said, I know the origin of one of the two groups of people following us. They are experts from the Azura clan. There are a total of 4 of them, and each of them is comparable to a perfected golden immortal from the immortal world. I've seen them attack and kill 2 devil race experts. It only took them half an incense stick of time to kill those 2 devil race experts. Tan Xiu smiled faintly. As long as they don't have any supremacy stage powerhouses, we don't need to fear them even if their number doubles. Let's go. It's been a long time since I've tasted the myriad spirit immortal wine of the Lost Nephas forest. I wonder if Supreme Lord Marquis is still here. Eagle said, Supreme Lord Marquis is dead. He left the Lost Nephas forest more than 700 years ago, but he was killed by an expert before he could leave the Nephas abyss. The smile on Tan Xiu's face froze. He turned to stare into Eagle's eyes and asked, who killed him? If I remember correctly, he once swore that he would never step out of the Lost Nephas forest for the rest of his life. Eagle keenly sensed the killing intent in Tan Xiu's eyes and said respectfully, it is said that the Supreme Star Cultivation Great Emperor of the immortal world failed his tribulation 700 or 800 years ago, and his soul was destroyed. Star Cultivation Great Emperor's clansmen were attacked by the Inner Pill sect and the Everlasting Palace. Supreme Lord Marquis seems to have a deep relationship with Star Cultivation Great Emperor, so he was willing to violate his oath to protect the Rosefinch Holy Sect. However, he has been in the Lost Nephas forest for too long, and he sells the most unique myriad spirit immortal wine. The wealth he has earned over the past 10,000 years has made countless experts in the Nephas abyss green with envy. In the past, Supreme Lord Marquis never left the Lost Nephas forest, so those envious experts couldn't do anything to him. But who? Tan Xiu interrupted him coldly and asked again. Eagle answered, Supreme Sky Ghost. The corner of Tan Xiu's mouth twitched a few times, and he grinned maliciously. Good, good, good. Another old friend. This is really interesting. The trash who once knelt in front of me and begged for mercy actually killed my close friend. Eagle, let me ask you. Since Supreme Lord Marquis has been killed, who is still selling the myriad spirit immortal wine? Eagle answered, Supreme Lord Marquis' 4 sons. Tan Xiu didn't say anything else and hurried on with the 2 of them. Although he hadn't been here for thousands of years, he still remembered the location of Supreme Lord Marquis' shop. Half a day later, he came to the outside of a palace that was as dark as ink. Looking at the words Thousand Spirit Palace carved on the plaque, he took a deep breath and stepped into the shop. Welcome, esteemed guests. A burly middle-aged man with a stocky build and a full beard came to greet them. His eyes gleamed as he glanced at Tang Xiu's group of 3 and asked with a smile, Are the 3 of you here to purchase the myriad spirit immortal wine? If so, I'm sorry to inform you that the myriad spirit immortal wine has been sold out. If you insist on buying it, I'm afraid you'll have to wait for several months. Tan Xiu asked in a deep voice, "Who are you?" "What?" The burly man was taken aback, and a puzzled look appeared on his face. Tan Xiu asked again, "Which son of Supreme Lord Marquis are you?" "If I remember correctly, he has a total of 6 sons. I've met the eldest, second, and third sons." The burly man sized up Tan Xiu and said, "I'm Marquis He Yao, the 4th son." "Who are you?" Tan Xiu said, "I'm the Great Tang Heavenly Emperor, the Emperor of the Great Tang Empire." "Marquis He Yao, there are some things I can't tell you now, but I hope you can send a message to your brothers and have them come see me immediately. What I'm about to announce is closely related to you." Chapter 1363. A hesitant look appeared on Marquis Darklight's face, but he eventually nodded after seeing Tan Xiu's cold expression. After sending out 3 message sigils, 3 figures appeared in front of Tan Xiu one after another. "What's the matter, 4th brother? Why did you make us rush over here?" "That's right, 4th brother. The new wine in the wine cellar is at its most critical moment. If you don't have anything important to do, I'm in a hurry to go back and take care of it." "Who are they?" Marquis Dark Bear, Marquis Dark Wind, and Marquis Dark Meng asked one after another. Empress Darklight said, "2nd brother, 5th brother, 6th brother. Don't be impatient. We'll talk about it later." "Great Tang Heavenly Emperor, I've heard of your name and the name of the Great Tang Empire. But I don't understand. Why did you ask me to call my 3 brothers over?" Tan Xiu slowly swept his gaze over them. Each of them was a tall and sturdy man with a tiger's back and a bear's waist. Tan Xiu took a deep breath and said in a deep voice, "Take me to see your father." Marquis Darkbear's expression changed, and he said angrily, "You are the Great Tang Heavenly Emperor? What do you mean by that? Don't you know that my father has already?" Tan Xiu said in a deep voice, "He's an old friend. Take me to pay respects to him." "Old friend?" Marquis Dark Bear and the 4 brothers looked at each other and communicated with each other via voice transmission. Then, Marquis Dark Bear said in a deep voice, "Since you are my father's old friend, please follow us." The doors of the 1,000 Spirit Palace opened, and the 4 brothers led Tan Xiu's group into the palace. After walking for about an incense stick's worth of time, they appeared in a spacious hall. Hundreds of flowers bloomed in this hall, and there were even immortal beasts lazing around. In the innermost part of the hall was the memorial tablet of Supreme Lord Marquis. Tan Xiu looked at the black tablet, and 2 drops of tears flowed from his eyes. Step by step, Tan Xiu came to the front of the memorial tablet and inserted the incense stick into the copper furnace. He clenched his right fist and placed it on the left side of his chest. After bowing, he said in an awe-inspiring manner, "Old friend, you once said that the outside world has nothing to do with you. Why are you doing this?" After a long while, Tan Xiu straightened his chest and shouted, "Great Tang Heavenly Emperor, swear an immortal oath in front of you that I'll avenge you for the rest of my life. Unless the Heavenly Ghost Sovereign's soul has already perished, otherwise, even if I have to descend into the Yellow Springs and slaughter my way into the 9 Nether Underworld, I'll still tear his corpse into 1,000 pieces." Wedra Black Bear, Wedra Dark Radiance, and Wedra Dark Radiance looked at each other in dismay. Although there was hatred swirling in their eyes, there was even more shock. This was because they had never heard of any friendship between their father and the Great Tang Heavenly Emperor. "2nd brother, this Great Tang Heavenly Emperor said that he had seen you before. Could it be that you don't recognize him?" Wedra Dark Radiance asked. Wedra Black Bear stared blankly at Tan Xiu for a long time. Then, he slowly shook his head and replied, "I can confirm that I've never seen him before." Wedra Dark Radiance said, "Could it be that you've forgotten about him after such a long time? He said that not only did he see you, but he also saw eldest brother and 3rd brother." Wedra Black Bear shook his head and said, "Unless it's before I can remember, I definitely won't be mistaken. I've never seen him before." Tan Xiu slowly turned his head and swept his gaze across the 4 brothers. He asked, "How did your eldest and 2nd brothers die?" Wedra Black Bear said, in order to avenge my father, they spent an astronomical amount of money to hire a group of perfected golden immortals to take revenge on the heavenly ghost sovereign. In the end, all of them died at the hands of the heavenly ghost sovereign. Tan Xiu asked, you guys have an irreconcilable blood feud with the heavenly ghost sovereign, so you should be paying attention to his movements. Tell me, where is he now? Wedra Black Bear said, the heavenly ghost immortal domain in the immortal world. Tan Xiu grinned and said, I didn't expect that he would actually go to the immortal world. Good, very good. I'll give the four of you a chance now. Put away the myriad spirit palace and leave the lost Nifa's forest with me in order to avenge your father and brothers. If you aren't willing, I won't force you. I'll avenge my old friend. Wedra Black Bear turned to look at the memorial tablets of his father, Supreme Lord Wedra, as well as his two brothers. He knelt down and kowtowed a few times. Then, he said in a deep voice, as a son, as a younger brother, and as an older brother, this blood feud is absolutely irreconcilable. We brothers have all heard of the great Tang Heavenly Emperor's fame. Father, eldest brother, third brother, we originally thought that we wouldn't be able to give you the chance to take revenge in this lifetime. But now, we see hope. We are willing to follow the great Tang Heavenly Emperor. As long as we can avenge you, the children of the Wedra Marquis family won't bat an eyelid even if we four brothers have to die. Thump, 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 the three brothers, Wedra Dark Shine, Wedra Dark Wind, and Wedra Meng, also knelt down. They didn't say anything, but their teary eyes were filled with determination. An immortal oath. It was an extremely important oath in the immortal world. The higher one's cultivation, the more binding the immortal oath would be. They could sense how powerful Tan Xiu was, so they were willing to trust him this once. Wedra Black Bear stood up and looked at Tan Xiu. He said solemnly, Great Tang Heavenly Emperor, we can follow you and leave this place. However, you need to answer a question of ours. If we are satisfied with your answer, the lives of us four brothers will be in your hands. Tan Xiu said firmly, ask away. Wedra Black Bear said, my fourth brother said that you've seen me before, but I've never seen you before. But I have never seen you before. I would like to ask you to dispel my doubts. Tan Xiu said, if you want me to tell you, you must agree to a condition of mine. Speak. Wedra Black Bear said seriously. Tan Xiu said, I need to lay down a soul seal curse in your body in advance. If you are captured by a supremacy stage powerhouse in the future, I can prevent certain things in your memories from being known to others. I agree. Wedra Black Bear said through gritted teeth. After Tan Xiu laid down the soul seal curse in Wedra Black Bear's body, he sent a voice transmission. I was the one who taught you the gilded immortal art. You should know my true identity now, right? You are. Wedra Black Bear's heart trembled, and his eyes were filled with disbelief as he cried out in alarm. However, before he could finish speaking, he sensed a terrifying aura emanating from Tan Xiu's body. He swallowed the rest of his words. I am the great Tang Heavenly Emperor now. Even your three brothers are not allowed to tell them my true identity. Otherwise, not only will you be killed, but I will also have to face the pursuit of powerful enemies. The current me is too weak, Tan Xiu said through voice transmission. Wedra Black Bear realized that he had misspoken and immediately replied, I understand. I didn't expect that it would be you. You are actually still alive. If my father knew about this, he would definitely be very happy. Don't worry, I won't tell anyone else that you are still alive. Tan Xiu nodded in satisfaction and said, in that case, pack your things and prepare to leave with me. In the future, you four brothers will follow by my side. Kill enemies with me, and avenge your father and brothers with me. Understood. Wedra Black Bear replied. Immediately. He slowly turned around and looked at his three brothers. He said seriously, from today onwards, our lives belong to the great Tang Heavenly Emperor. If you trust me, then please trust the great Tang Heavenly Emperor. He will definitely avenge our father and brothers. He definitely will. Second brother. Although the three brothers were confused, they knew that their second brother must have known something, and they had absolute trust in their second brother's words. "Greetings, Master." Wedra Black Bear turned around and knelt on one knee in front of Tan Xiu. "Greetings, Master." The three brothers also knelt on one knee. Tan Xiu shook his head and said, "From today onwards, you four brothers will directly address me as Great Tang Martial Uncle." "Great Tang Martial Uncle." The four called out again. Tan Xiu released his primal chaos energy and lifted the four of them up. He nodded with a smile and said, "It's been a long time since I tasted your family's myriad spirit immortal wine. Since your newly brewed myriad spirit immortal wine still needs a few months to be completed, you guys can stay here for a few months. I have some matters to attend to in the 9th floor. After I'm done, I will return and bring you out of here." Wedra Black Bear hurriedly said, "Great Tang Martial Uncle, are you going to the 9th floor's Nifa city?" Tan Xiu nodded and said, "That's right. There is something I need in Nifa's city that I need to buy." Wedra Black Bear pondered for a moment and took out another interspatial ring from his interspatial ring. He handed it to Tan Xiu and said, "Great Tang Martial Uncle, the 9th floor is fraught with dangers, and the items there are extremely expensive. Please take the wealth in this interspatial ring and use it as you wish. From now on, everything that belongs to us four brothers will belong to you." Tan Xiu took the interspatial ring and scanned it with his spiritual sense. He immediately sucked in a breath of cold air. Despite having a lot of wealth in the past, he was still shocked when he saw the immortal crystals and crystal essences inside the interspatial ring. After a rough count, he knew that there were 2 mountains of immortal crystals and crystal essences inside. There were billions of immortal crystals and billions of crystal essences in total. "Your father," Wedra Black Bear said seriously, "when my father left the lost Nifa's forest, he didn't take any of his wealth with him. He wanted to do something, so he left all the wealth he had accumulated over the past 10,000 years. Great Tang Martial Uncle, this is half of our wealth. If you think it's not enough, we will give you the remaining half." Tan Xiu immediately waved his hand and said, "It's enough. This is enough." Having said that, he put away the interspatial ring and took out an ancient book from it. He handed it to Wedra Black Bear and said, "This is the Four Saints Sword Formation. It's very suitable for you four brothers to cultivate. I hope that one day, even if you are still perfected golden immortals, you can still rely on the power of the Four Saints Sword Formation to kill supremes. It's nearing the end. Everyone, quickly follow my WeChat account, Silent Night Thoughts. Remember, you must search for Silent Night Thoughts or JYJS00 on it. At 8 p.m. on the day of the end, I will distribute a big red packet on the account to thank everyone for their support. Also, news about the new book, as well as minor characters will be posted on the account as soon as possible. If you haven't followed it yet, quickly follow it." Chapter 1364. The Four Saints Sword Formation. When the four brothers heard this, shock immediately appeared on their faces. All of them had heard of the Four Saints Sword Formation, and it was even to the extent that the formidability of this sword formation was ranked in the top 10 of the sword formation manuals of the immortal dimension. If the four of them were really able to cultivate it successfully and cooperate perfectly, then surmounting their realms to kill their enemies would simply be a piece of cake. "Thank you, Martial Uncle Great Tang." The four brothers expressed their gratitude with excitement on their faces. Tan Xiu waved his hand and said, "From now on, we are one family. It's my duty to give you things to make you stronger. So, put away your feelings of gratitude and cultivate seriously. I look forward to the day when you can fight alongside me." "Okay." Tan Xiu's words warmed the four brothers' hearts. Soon after, Tan Xiu brought Seaway Monarch and Eagle out of the Thousand Spirit Palace and even the lost Nifa's forest. Even though they knew that there were still people tailing them, and that there were even more of them than in the lost Nifa's forest, they did not immediately take action. Instead, they rushed towards the entrance of the 7th floor. "Master, why didn't you kill them?" Seaway Monarch asked. Tan Xiu said indifferently, "Now is not the time. There are at least 4 groups of people following us when we leave the Lost Nephas forest. Furthermore, I can't guarantee that there aren't any other experts following behind those 4 groups of people. So, there's no rush to get rid of them. Wait until we reach the 7th floor. I know of a good place to kill and rob. As long as they dare to come, I can guarantee that they won't be able to return. Blackstone Cliff? Eagle suddenly asked. Tan Shio nodded and smiled. That's right, Blackstone Cliff. The terrain there was dangerous, and there was a very strong spatial gravity. Even a Supreme Being expert would not be able to display his full strength there. That's why I chose that place as the battlefield. Let's speed up. We can't let them catch up to us before we reach Blackstone Cliff. Okay. Seaway Monarch now admired Tan Shio from the bottom of his heart. Therefore, he believed that Tan Shio's choice wouldn't be wrong. 6 days later. The 3 of them finally entered the 7th layer of Nephas abyss and arrived at the Black Rock Cliff. Despite feeling the immense spatial pressure, the 3 of them were not worried at all. They quickly stopped in a spacious area. Shio! 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 More than a dozen experts followed from behind. They were divided into 3 groups. The first 2 groups had 6 people, while the third group had 4 people. Without exception, the weakest amongst them was at the initial stage of the Golden Immortal realm. The strongest one among them was a late-stage perfected Golden Immortal. Devil Race, Ghost Race, Azura Race. Tang Shio looked at everyone with a smile on his face. Then, he said with all seriousness, "You think that I have a lot of wealth, so you followed me from the 6th floor to the 7th floor. You want to kill us and get our wealth, don't you?" The leader of the demons, a mysterious black-robed expert shrouded in darkness, sneered, "You're right. We usually let a fat sheep like you go. It's just that you seem to be quite capable since you can even subdue the famous eagle in the immortal world." Tan Shio smiled faintly. "I'm more capable than you can imagine. If you want to kill me and take my treasures, then you must be prepared to be killed by me. Now, I'll give you one last chance. Scram immediately, or all of you will have to stay here today." One of the demon experts chuckled. "Since we dared to chase you to the 7th floor, we're already prepared to risk our lives. None of you are Supremes. Even if you're all late-stage perfected Golden Immortals, I'm afraid you'll die if you're surrounded by more than a dozen of us." Tan Shio smiled. "It seems that you 3 groups have secretly discussed and are ready to join forces. In that case, all of you will stay here. Array, rise." Immediately. A transparent light barrier instantly enveloped everything within a radius of 10,000 miles. While the 16 people were all surprised, Tang Shio called Old Sycamore and the other 3 out from the Heavenly Abode artifact. Quite a lot of enemies. Old Sycamore immediately realized the situation in front of him the moment he appeared and said with a smile. "Supremes?" The 16 experts of the Demon Race, and Azura Race all looked horrified. Moreover, they never dreamed that Tan Shio would actually bring along the Heavenly Abode with him. Not only was there a Supremacy Stage expert inside, but there were also 3 perfected Golden Immortals. 1 Supremacy. 6 perfected Golden Immortals. The 16 experts who were trying to kill and rob Chu Feng of his treasures were frightened by this terrifying force. They even wanted to retreat. "I'll give you one last chance," Tan Shio said with a smile. "If you're willing to hand over all your wealth, I'll tell you the way to leave this array and let you leave alive. Otherwise, you'll all die and your souls will scatter, never to be reincarnated." "Kill." The demon realm expert snorted coldly. As the black mist transformed into a long saber and slashed at Tan Shio, the 5 experts beside him also attacked. "Kill. Kill." As for the other 2 groups of people, no one was willing to hand over all their wealth, so they chose to fight. "Old Sycamore, go." Tan Shio roared and immediately activated the Rainbow Illusory Boundary. The instant Old Sycamore made his move, the Rainbow Illusory Boundary instantly caused the 16 enemies to lose themselves within it. although they all woke up in an instant. However, a ninth-grade immortal sword still swept past two of the demon clan experts out of thin air. Seaway Monarch, Zenith Venerable, Golden-Eyed Great Rock, and Nether Sea Whale King, who had been brought along by Tan Xiu, also launched their attacks, instantly inflicting heavy injuries on the other four powerful enemies. Eagle moved with incredible speed. His hands turned into sharp blades as he appeared in front of an Azura tribe powerhouse. Just as he wrapped his arms around the Azura tribe powerhouse, Eagle plunged his right hand into the Azura tribe powerhouse's left back and dug out his heart. Devour. Divine ability. Tan Xiu's body suddenly produced an enormous suction force towards the remaining powerful enemies. While they were affected, Old Sycamore and the others launched a flurry of fierce attacks. The surprise attack killed 3 of the 16 perfected golden immortals and injured 4 others. The other 6 didn't suffer heavy injuries, but they were still somewhat affected by the battle. A bitter battle. It unfolded within a radius of 5,000 kilometers. Although Tan Xiu's support abilities were extremely powerful, his strength wasn't weak either. He targeted an early-stage perfected golden immortal and fiercely attacked him. In just the time it took for an incense stick to burn, his opponent was in imminent danger and his injuries worsened. 2 whole days passed. Tan Xiu was seriously injured, and so were Zenith Venerable, Seaway Monarch, Golden-Eyed Great Rock, Nether Sea Whale King, and Eagle. Although Old Sycamore was a supremacy stage powerhouse, he also suffered some injuries after killing 6 perfected golden immortals in 2 days. However, out of the 16 perfected golden immortals, 12 had been killed, and only 4 were still bitterly holding on. It was only a matter of time before they were killed. Outside the formation. On the peak of a black rock mountain 1,000 kilometers away, an old man and a young man were sitting cross-legged, quietly watching the grand formation in front of them. They each held a bamboo tube in their hands, and the ends of the bamboo tube were blocked by a transparent ball of light. This was an array-breaking mirror. Those who possessed it wouldn't have their vision obstructed, and they could clearly see everything inside the formation. Master, it looks like we really don't need to do anything. Those 3 groups of unscrupulous bastards have already been taken care of, the youthful perfected golden immortal said with a smile. The old man's aura was at the supremacy stage. He put down the array-breaking mirror in his hand and sighed. I still haven't figured out the origins of those people. However, I can still recognize Eagle after spending so much time in the Nifa's abyss. It's just that I didn't expect him to recognize someone else as his master. The youth said with a smile, Eagle is an eccentric person. His only purpose was to buy the soul condensation dew and obtain the soul condensation art to recondense his wife's shattered immortal soul. I think that mysterious powerhouse should have what Eagle needs. The old man nodded. You're right. It's just that there's a supremacy stage powerhouse among them, and I can't identify that supremacy stage powerhouse. It's really unexpected. Who do you think they are? The youth shook his head. I don't know them either. Apart from Eagle, the others seem to have appeared out of thin air in the Nifa's abyss. I don't know their origins either. The old man nodded slowly and sighed. We're here for these villains. Since someone has taken care of them, there's no need for us to do anything. Let's go. There's no need to watch anymore. The youth said, Master, if those 4 self-destruct their immortal souls, I'm afraid, the old man waved his hand. Don't worry. Those 4 won't self-destruct their immortal souls. Even if they wanted to detonate their immortal souls, it would not change the outcome. After all, the strength of a supreme being was not something that one could imagine. I can see that supremacy stage powerhouse hasn't used his full strength at all. After a while, the old man and the youth disappeared from the range of Blackstone Cliff. Boom, a violent explosion erupted from the great array as Tan Xiu, Seaway Monarch, and the others rushed out. They looked quite distressed and had serious injuries on their bodies. However, the last enemy who was killed self-destructed his immortal soul was directly blocked by Old Sycamore and didn't cause too much damage to them. Cough, cough, Old Sycamore coughed up a mouthful of blood. After rushing out of the range of the explosion, he raised his hand and wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth. His aged face was full of a bitter smile. In Quiet Night's heart, Xue Qingqing had always been the most beautiful heroine in the immortal world. Tan Xiu was an extreme lover, and with him around, the Rosefinch Holy Sect didn't have to worry about a lack of military force. On the other hand, Xue Qingqing was an extreme lover, and with her around, all the traitors in the Rosefinch Holy Sect would have nowhere to hide. Unfortunately, fate played tricks on people. Xue Qingqing infiltrated the Rosefinch Holy Sect as a traitor, and the lives of all her relatives were in the hands of Shade Demon Zhu Wushou. On one side was love, and on the other side was familial love. How could Xue Qingqing, who was an extreme lover, make a choice? Everyone could imagine the pain and torture she had experienced. It could be said that Xue Qingqing was poignant and tragic. Yesterday, Quiet Night updated Xue Qingqing's character picture on her WeChat account, which completely matched Xue Qingqing's temperament and image. At the same time, she also wrote a special article for her. Brothers and sisters who were interested could quickly follow Quiet Night's WeChat account to get a first look. Quiet Night's WeChat account was JYJS00, or directly search for Quiet Night's thoughts on the account. Chapter 1365. A concerned look appeared on Tan Xiu's face as he quickly appeared beside Old Sycamore. He stuffed a purple scent pill into his mouth and asked, "Are you all right, Old Sycamore?" Old Sycamore forced a smile and said, "I'm too old and broke through to the supremacy stage too late, so I was seriously injured in the end. The power of a perfected golden immortal's immortal soul detonation is not to be underestimated." Tan Xiu nodded solemnly. "You're right. If a perfected golden immortal detonates his immortal soul, even a supremacy would be caught off guard and be seriously injured. However, we still managed to kill all the powerful enemies after a fierce battle. This achievement is dazzling enough." "There's something I don't quite understand, Master," said Old Sycamore. "You want to ask why all the enemies suddenly became absent-minded when we attacked, right?" Tan Xiu smiled. "That's right." Old Sycamore smiled. "If it weren't for our amazing achievements at the beginning, I'm afraid it wouldn't have been easy for us to kill all of them. One of my divine abilities is to confuse the enemy's mind and make them hallucinate," Tan Xiu said with a smile. "It's also the best time to kill them." Old Sycamore suddenly understood, and the others also looked shocked. Although they had vaguely guessed that the enemy's momentary absent-mindedness was probably related to Tan Xiu, they were still shaken to hear Tan Xiu admit it. Tan Xiu glanced at everyone and threw the purple scent pill to them. Then, he said in a deep voice, "Eagle, accompany me. Everyone else, enter the heavenly abode artifact to recuperate. You don't have much time, so you must recuperate as soon as possible because we don't know what kind of dangers we'll encounter later. Only by quickly recovering to the peak will we be able to better face the upcoming dangers." "Understood." Old Sycamore's group of 5 nodded and entered the heavenly abode artifact. Tan Xiu looked at Eagle and said, "We also need to find a place to recuperate. We'll leave this place after our injuries are better." Eagle said, "I'm not too familiar with the 7th floor, but I know a place on the 8th floor that should be safe. However, I'm afraid it won't be easy for us to reach the safe zone on the 8th floor from here." Tan Xiu thought about it and said, "There's no way to go to the 8th floor to recuperate. There's still a long way to go before we reach the entrance to the 8th floor, and we'll have to pass through several dangerous areas. With the extent of our injuries, it won't be easy to break through. Let's go. Let's go to the mountains near Blackstone Cliff and clear out some magical beasts to create a safe zone. Coupled with the array formation that I've set up, we should be able to safely recuperate." 2 months later. Tan Xiu and Eagle had just barely recovered from their injuries. As the two of them continued on their journey, they encountered many dangers along the way, and only after a few narrow escapes did they reach the entrance to the 8th floor. After the two of them entered the 8th floor, they encountered several sneak attacks from powerful enemies, demonic beasts along the way. There were even some spatial cracks that nearly sucked the two of them into spatial turbulence. "Master, the entrance to the 9th floor is 2 million kilometers away. We have to. Eagle's expression instantly turned ugly before he could finish speaking. He stared straight ahead and directly grabbed Tan Xiu's arm to stop them. Tan Xiu frowned and asked, "What's wrong?" Eagle said, "Our luck is terrible. We encountered the Nephis hurricane." Tan Xiu asked, "What's the Nephis hurricane?" Eagle explained, "Those who haven't lived in the Nephis abyss for a long time wouldn't even know of its existence. The Nephis hurricane is an extremely terrifying natural hazard in the Nephis abyss. Even a perfected golden immortal would most likely die if they were trapped by it. That's why it's called the ominous hurricane of the Nephis abyss. Everyone who encounters it will immediately avoid it." Tan Xiu suddenly understood. After a moment of silence, he said, "In that case, let's hide for a while." Eagle smiled bitterly. "It's too late. It's impossible for us to hide from the entire Nephis hurricane with our current strength, unless we've broken through to the supremacy stage. However, we can't completely avoid it. We can still avoid being harmed by the core hurricane. Let's go. Then let Old Sycamore take us away." Tan Xiu directly called Old Sycamore out of the heavenly abode artifact and quickly explained the situation to him. Then, the two of them were carried by Old Sycamore and quickly dashed away. A quarter of an hour later. A bitter smile appeared on Old Sycamore's face as he helplessly said, "The Nephis hurricane is too fast. Even if I'm a supremacy, I still can't completely avoid it. We need to resist the aftershocks of the hurricane. Hopefully, we can save our lives." After a while, the aftershocks of the Nephis hurricane had already enveloped the three of them. Although the aftershocks were powerful, Old Sycamore was a supremacy stage powerhouse after all. In the end, he was able to safely protect Tan Xiu and Eagle. "What's that?" Tang Xiu's eyes penetrated the spiral hurricane and saw the mountain-like object in the depths of the hurricane as he asked aloud. Eagle said, "Rumor has it that although the Nephis hurricane is extremely terrifying, there's a huge treasure hidden inside. It's just that many supremacy stage powerhouses have come here in the past, but they couldn't obtain the treasure in the depths of the hurricane while ensuring their own safety." Tan Xiu took a deep breath and said in a deep voice, "Old Sycamore, do you dare to enter the hurricane's core area with me?" Old Sycamore hurriedly said, "No. It's too dangerous inside. Only death awaits us if we enter." Tan Xiu took out a 9th grade defensive immortal artifact from his interspatial ring and handed it to Old Sycamore. "I have a 9th grade defensive immortal artifact, and now you have one too. I think we should risk it. Nothing ventured, nothing gained. Riches and honor come from danger." Seeing Tan Xiu's firm expression, Old Sycamore immediately forced a smile and said, "Since you've decided, then I'll follow you. I hope we can obtain some amazing treasures inside this hurricane." Tan Xiu nodded and said, "Eagle, enter the heavenly abode artifact." "Understood." Eagle complied and immediately entered the heavenly abode artifact. Whoosh! Whoosh! Two hazy silhouettes instantly appeared inside the hurricane zone. As the two desperately resisted the violent tearing of the hurricane, numerous wounds appeared on their bodies. However, Tan Xiu's situation was a bit better than Old Sycamore's. After all, he cultivated the heavenly art of cosmic genesis, a demonic body cultivation art, so his physique was a bit stronger than Old Sycamore, a supremacy stage powerhouse. After Tan Xiu thoroughly saw what was inside, his eyes instantly widened to the size of a copper bell. His body slightly trembled. Old Sycamore wasn't much better than Tan Xiu. He stared at the thing in disbelief, his eyes nearly popping out of their sockets. "It's a corpse," Old Sycamore said with a trembling voice. Tan Xiu had once crossed the divine tribulation and felt the aura of divinity. He could feel the surging divinity from that huge corpse. This indicated that the owner of that corpse was once a god, a truly powerful deity. Old Sycamore turned to look at Tan Xiu and asked with a hurried breath, "What should we do?" Tan Xiu's eyes lit up and he sternly shouted, "I've said before that riches and honor come from danger. Since we've entered the hurricane zone and found a super treasure, how can we return empty-handed? This corpse should be the corpse of a god. We'll obtain unimaginable benefits in the future if we obtain it. Obtain it. Old Sycamore nodded firmly. His surging immortal force surged toward the corpse and instantly wrapped around it. Just as he was about to pull the corpse over, the immortal force he released suddenly ignited. The ferocious flames instantly burned in front of him and nearly ignited his body. Damn it! Old Sycamore retracted his immortal force and retreated 10,000 meters back as if he had seen a ghost. Only then did he avoid being burned by the flames. Tang Xiu's heartbeat quickened. Even though Old Sycamore's actions had almost caused him to be burned by the flames, he still instantly released his primal chaos energy and wrapped it around the god's corpse. Then, he flew towards the corpse while pulling it with all his might. This time, the primal chaos energy that wrapped around the god's corpse did not burn. After slowly pulling the god's corpse towards him, Tang Xiu could clearly see that there was a huge hole in the god's chest. This hole had a diameter of 100 meters. Although it looked small to the 30,000-meter-tall corpse, it was a fatal injury. Tang Xiu could sense a terrifying volcano surging inside the corpse's body. Although the corpse was already dead, the terrifying energy contained inside it was much stronger than when he was a supreme in the immortal world. Come in. Tang Xiu made a series of hand seals. As he circulated the heavenly art of cosmic genesis to the limit, the tens of thousands of planets in his body began to vibrate. Only then did he barely manage to pull the god's corpse into the heavenly abode artifact. In the blink of an eye, he sealed the 30,000-meter-tall corpse in a corner of the heavenly abode artifact. In fact, he had even used the god corpse's aura to inform the formation pavilion master. Let's go. Old Sycamore was ecstatic when he saw that Tang Xiu had succeeded. He grabbed Tang Xiu with all his might and rushed out of the hurricane zone with him. Pfft! Old Sycamore coughed up a few mouthfuls of blood. As his body swayed, Tang Xiu immediately supported him and quickly hid under a black rock. He allowed the heavenly abode artifact to fall into a crevice in the black rock and entered the artifact with Old Sycamore. How are your injuries? Asked Tang Xiu with a face full of concern. Old Sycamore shook his head and squeezed out a smile. I'm fine. Although my injuries are more serious than before, I won't die yet. Hurry up and take a look at the corpse. Tang Xiu nodded heavily. Just as he sized up the corpse, he noticed that Eagle, Seaway Monarch, and the others had arrived. Heavens! Is this the corpse of a god? This corpse.